Chapter 1623, Indestructible. 2. This was all because as its strength declined, it would struggle to escape from Jian Chen and the Spirit King even if it tried to flee using the folds of space. This ability was directly proportional to its strength. Jian Chen, it'll be up to you next, Ada said to Jian Chen through a communication technique. His voice was extremely weak, he was now incapacitated. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He turned into a blur and caught up with the evil spirit in a flash. He directly stabbed the red mist. This strike only flickered with resplendent white sword chi. Most of it was hidden inside without leaking out to prevent damaging the Tianyuan continent with its shockwaves. At the same time, the azure and violet glow had completely vanished. Jian Chen could sense that Adriana was constantly observing the events here. To avoid revealing the origins of the twin swords, he concealed the unique glow of the sword so that none of it was emitted. He knew that not all god kings knew the origins of the twin swords, but he was unwilling to risk it. The Ziying sword stabbed into the red mist with powerful sword chi, immediately causing the red mist to churn violently. Jian Chen's attack did not contain his full strength, but it had just managed to reach the level of godhood. Wherever the sword passed by, the surrounding red mist would begin to disperse. The evil spirit's strength declined once again, dropping to receival from early returnants. When the evil spirit's strength was similar to or even greater than Jian Chen's, his attacks were unable to harm it much at all, allowing it to endure them relatively easily with its own strength. However, as it grew weaker, it gradually became more and more difficult for it to endure the godhood-level attacks from Jian Chen. Virtually every time he struck out would be enough to deal a heavy blow to the evil spirit and rapidly shave away its strength. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts with the God-slaying formation finally arrived. It rapidly descended from the air and enveloped the evil spirit, using its sword chi to injure the evil spirit. The Spirit King also returned from outer space. He stood opposite to Jian Chen and began to attack the evil spirit with his full strength. However, the two of them were just too powerful. They were able to fight recklessly in outer space, but they had to act extremely careful each time they struck out to avoid destroying the continent now. They completely concealed their energy without letting any of it leak out. Surrounded, the evil spirit was no longer able to devour the four brothers. At the same time, its strength became weaker and weaker after each attack, before dropping below the origin realm to sainthood. Jian Chen had charged into the evil spirit's red mist to save the four brothers who were still trapped in there. You can never kill me, my sustenance. I am indestructible. No one can kill me. The evil spirit roared wildly. After dropping to sainthood, there was no longer any hope for it to escape. All it could do was curse secretly. If it had not wanted to devour the four brothers and benefit greatly, it would not have fallen to such a state, not only failing the devouring in the crucial moment but even getting heavily injured by the four of them. Remove the god-slaying formation. Leave it to me and the Spirit King, Jian Chen said with a deep voice. The evil spirit had now become equivalent to a saint emperor, so they no longer required the god-slaying formation. In fact, the formation would even get in their way if it was maintained. Without any hesitation, the Origin Realm experts from the two worlds immediately removed the god-slaying formation. As soon as the formation was removed, Jian Chen controlled the primordial god silk to keep the evil spirit trapped there, so it could not escape. The evil spirit charged into the primordial god silk in various places constantly in an attempt to escape, but it could no longer break out of the netting with its current strength. Faced with Jian Chen and the Spirit King's attacks, its strength dropped once again, this time to the mortal realm. Its red mist vanished as well, revealing the evil spirit's core. The core was a fist-sized ball of red liquid. It seemed as demonic as blood, radiating with an extremely icy cold and evil presence. This was the core of the evil spirit. Only when it was destroyed would the evil spirit truly be vanquished. Jian Chen directly stabbed the evil spirit's core through the gaps in the net, but his move passed through the core. Not only had it failed to cut it in half, but not even a sliver of the core's power had been used up, as if his attack was useless against the core. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed at this scene. The Spirit King's face changed slightly as well. He slashed down and the outcome was the same as Jian Chen's move. The cloud stream sword passed through the core and failed to harm it at all. You can't kill me. I am indestructible. A mental pulse spread out from the core with the wild laughter of the evil spirit. Its words contained a sense of mockery. It seemed to be mocking the sources of sustenance that were overestimating themselves. Jian Chen's face sank. With a cold snort, he used martial soul force with his soul at reciprocity. Immediately, a unique power completely condensed from the power of the soul suddenly appeared. The power was formless and unable to harm the physical body, but it especially targeted the soul. It then shot towards the evil spirit with a flash of light as a sharp sword under Jian Chen's control. Jian Chen still had not found the method to push martial soul force to its greatest potential in the past few years, but his soul had already reached reciprocity after all, so the usage of martial soul force immediately led to the permeation of a certain pressure in the surroundings. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts of the two worlds changed when they felt this presence. To their shock, they discovered that this pressure suppressed their souls. Even though the pressure did not target them, basically all the receival experts among them could clearly feel a sense of dread from the depths of their souls. It was like their souls would immediately become extremely heavily injured if the pressure targeted them. Their souls might even directly disperse. The pressure formed an extremely great threat towards all the receival experts present. Only the returnance experts managed to maintain their composure. Of course, they would feel the exact same feeling as the receival experts if the pressure targeted them. Martial soul force was an extremely great power, so great that it was enough to send chills down the spines of many people from the Saints' world. Martial soul force could basically kill experts of the same level instantly, and martial soul force would still heavily injure even those stronger than the user. However, Jian Chen still had not grasped the method to use martial soul force, so he was unable to demonstrate its full potential. As a result, his martial soul force right now could only threaten those weaker than him. The martial soul force passed through the evil spirit's body as an invisible sword, but to Jian Chen's disappointment, it failed to harm the evil spirit as well. Chapter 1624, Indestructible, 3. Although the evil spirit possessed a consciousness, it was not a true living organism. Rather, it was an extremely unique existence. It was not bound by the laws of the world. It was impossible to kill it with normal methods. The weakened evil spirit had completely lost its ability to flee. The primordial god Silk had firmly trapped it. Both Jian Chen and the Spirit King attempted many methods to try and kill the evil spirit, but it seemed like its core was just as it had been described, an indestructible existence. No matter what attacks Jian Chen and the Spirit King used, they only managed to disperse the evil spirit's power and failed to harm its core. Master, it said that only the primordial god Silk can nullify the crisis of the world. You must use the power of the primordial god Silk to destroy it. The voices of the sword spirits rang out in Jian Chen's head, immediately filling Jian Chen with bitterness. He had considered using the primordial god Silk to kill the evil spirit long ago, but it had already been snapped into two segments, and the power within it was basically exhausted. The tiny amount remaining could only keep the evil spirit trapped. It was nowhere near enough to kill the evil spirit. He had also tried channeling his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, but the outcome achieved was insignificant. Even if he poured all his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, it would not be nearly enough to reach the power required to wipe out the evil spirit. He estimated that it still would not be enough even if the Spirit King, the Origin Realm experts, and the Sainthood experts from both worlds poured their powers together. The primordial god Silk's power was extremely unique. It was of exceedingly great quality, where Saint Force and Origin energy completely paled in comparison. The requirement to refine other energies into the primordial god Silk's power was obviously terrifying. Is the evil spirit really unkillable? Jian Chen murmured with a very heavy heart. The Spirit King's face also sank. He stared at the core of the evil spirit trapped in the primordial god Silk. He had also discovered that he was unable to do anything to the evil spirit. Since we can't kill it, it looks like we can only keep the evil spirit imprisoned for all eternity. Once we become even more powerful, we can come up with another method to kill it. I'll use the primordial god silk as a seal and keep it trapped in the Inata Tower. Nothing should go wrong like that, Jian Chen thought. He really did not want to reveal the Inata Tower at this moment since Adriana was watching. After all, the Inata Tower was a famed treasure of the Inata Grand Prime. Its power was beyond doubt. Even though it was damaged, he believed that there would still be countless experts who were willing to go as far as to fight to the death for the tower. Once Adriana leaked the fact that he possessed the Inata Tower in the Saint's world, there would be no more peace for him. However, the power within the primordial god silk was only being depleted, so the time the evil spirit could remain trapped was being reduced as well. He needed to find a way to imprison the evil spirit before the primordial god silk's power was completely exhausted. Jian Chen had no confidence in imprisoning the evil spirit on the Tian Yuan continent or the world of Forsaken Saints. He could only think of two places where he could keep the evil spirit trapped, the first being the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, and the second being the Inata Tower. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was in perfect shape, but in terms of quality, it was nowhere as great as the damaged Inata Tower. Jian Chen would never trust the Supreme Divine Hall to keep the evil spirit trapped, so the safest method could only be the Inata Tower. Jian Chen no longer worried about the Inata Tower being exposed after making up his mind. He immediately took it out so he could keep the evil spirit trapped in there. The Inata Tower stood in Jian Chen's hand as an inch-tall structure. Even though it had been shrunken, its surface riddled with sword chi still had a presence. Each strand of sword chi flickered with light and gave off shocking sword intent. However, the 4 strands of sword chi at the very top of the tower were dull and lifeless, making them stand out among the other dazzling sword chi. The moment Jian Chen took out the Inata Tower, the 4 brothers who a few Saint Emperors supported glanced over at the tower in his hand as if they had sensed something. Their dull eyes lit up at that moment. Without any exception, their eyes became fixated on the dull sword slashes, and they seemed to become lost. A mysterious force seemed to be drawing them over. It also filled them with a sense of familiarity as well as unfamiliarity. The damaged door to the first floor of the tower opened and a great force enveloped the evil spirit's core, dragging it towards the tower. The evil spirit's core trembled violently, resisting with its full strength. It sensed an extremely terrifying omen, so it could not afford to be sucked into the Inata Tower. Although the tower was damaged, it was still enough to send chills down its spine. However, the evil spirit was just too weak right now. It could not resist the tower under Jian Chen's control. Its core broke free from the primordial god silk and inched towards the Inata Tower. This is all because of you, my sources of sustenance. Come, my second power. Tremble and shake before it. The evil spirit bellowed urgently with determination. After it bellowed, an extremely great spatial crack suddenly appeared in outer space. Within the crack was a blood-red world that shone a demonic red. An icy cold presence similar to the evil spirit's core leaked out. Jian Chen and the Spirit King's face suddenly changed when they saw this. Disbelief flooded their eyes. They could obviously tell that all the evil spirit's power was stored within the huge crack in space with their eyes. At the same time, the power was completely equivalent to what the evil spirit possessed in its peak condition. Impossible, Jian Chen and the Spirit King's faces paled slightly. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts of the 2 worlds felt despair. The evil spirit in its peak condition was so powerful and was undefeatable. If it had not used a method similar to self-destruction to break out of the primordial god silk earlier, Jian Chen and the Spirit King would never have been able to dominate the evil spirit. Yet at this moment, just when they were about to suppress the evil spirit and achieve victory, they had never thought that the evil spirit would still be hiding such great power. This made Jian Chen and the Spirit King feel despair as well. Once the evil spirit returned to its peak strength, they would have nothing to fight against it. After all, the primordial god silk had basically become useless and the Spirit King could no longer display his peak strength after paying the price from using the second move of a will that splits the heavens. We can't let the power descend. A sliver of determination and madness appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He ignored all consequences as he urged the Anata Tower to suck away the evil spirit. However, the evil spirit seemed to have formed a connection with the tremendous power hidden within the spatial crack when it appeared. No matter what Jian Chen did, he was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Anata Tower. It was like he was not just sucking the evil spirit's core but the tremendously evil power in the crack as well. It was not that the Anata Tower was not powerful enough, but Jian Chen was not strong enough. After all, the power hidden within the crack had completely exceeded his own strength. I absorbed the powers from that rock, except I was never able to completely fuse the powers of the rock. I was unable to control the two powers simultaneously with the strength of my consciousness as well, so I left the control of one of the powers to a fragment of my soul long ago. I hid it into a world I had carved out myself. All you have done is made me waste one of the powers I had absorbed from the rock. I planned on devouring you all so that my consciousness could become even more powerful then fuse the two powers afterwards, but I never thought that you would all be much harder to deal with than I had thought, forcing me to use my second power. A mental pulse was emitted from the core of the evil spirit. It was filled with resentment. Chapter 1625. The power of all. As the evil spirit's mental pulse spread out, everyone became rather pale, whether it be the sainthood experts or the origin realm experts. Despair had even filled the hearts of many people. Even Jian Chen and the Spirit King had never become so stern before. Shock, disbelief, and some despair filled their cold gazes. They had never expected that they had only exhausted half of the evil spirit's power after so much effort and paying such a great price. It actually could not control the other half of its power, so it separated it from itself and hid it into a miniature world, controlled by a fragment of his soul, akin to a clone. The second portion of power was so great that it was completely equivalent to what the evil spirit possessed at its peak condition. Once the evil spirit fused with its second portion of power, it would return to its peak condition. Even if Jian Chen and the Spirit King worked together, it would be impossible for them to achieve victory over such an evil spirit. Not to mention how the primordial god silk that was particularly effective against the evil spirit had basically become useless. All its power had been drained, so it was unable to pose any harm to the evil spirit anymore. Are we really all going to die because of this crisis? Jian Chen's heart was filled with sorrow. Both he and the Spirit King had far exceeded the limits of the lower world in terms of strength, having reached godhood-level battle prowess. It should have been extremely easy for them to deal with the crisis of the world with their strength and the primordial god silk. However, the crisis had become more powerful than it had ever been due to the existence of the Yin-Yang Saint Rock. It had already exceeded all the calamities that had appeared in various other lower worlds, so they were helpless against it even with their tremendous strength. It still can't recover right now. We can't let it fuse with its other power, or there'll be no more hope for us. We have to stop it no matter the cost, the Spirit King said with a heavy heart. Stop it? Jian Chen murmured softly. He gazed at the huge crack in outer space and became extremely grim. He had originally planned to imprison the evil spirit's core in the Anata Tower. However, its second core of power had begun descending, so the evil spirit had established a certain connection with it, which prevented him from sucking the evil spirit into the tower now. There's no way for us to stop it. The only method is to destroy the core of the crisis before it fuses, Jian Chen replied sternly. Destroy it? We've tried everything, but we still haven't even been able to touch it. How would you destroy it like that? The Spirit King was stern. Once the evil spirit fused with its other half, the Tianyuan continent was not the only place that would face destruction. The world of Forsaken Saints would not be able to avoid the same fate either. There's still one last way we can try. Even if it doesn't end up destroying the core, we've already run out of choices. We have to try it no matter what, even if we only manage to heavily injure the core because we've really reached the end of the line, Jian Chen said sternly. He sent his consciousness into the primordial god silk to control it under the Spirit King's doubtful gaze. The primordial god silk that trapped the evil spirit's source began to elongate at that moment. It shot off into the distance with unbelievable speed, disappearing into the horizon in a single moment. As it continued to spread out, the golden thread seemed like the trunk of a tree, constantly producing branches that forked away from it. In the end, it seemed to have become an extremely large golden net, enveloping the entire Tianyuan continent in a few dozen seconds. It did not just stop there as it continued towards the Sea Realm, Beast God Continent, and Wasteland Continent. In the end, the territories of all the races were enveloped within the golden net. From outer space, golden netting seemed to cover the entire planet. The net seemed to have expanded across every inch of the planet, without missing any parts at all. The threads of the huge net had filled all the streets and alleyways in populous cities. After the primordial god Silk enveloped the entire world in the form of a net, it completely ran out of power. It had been completely drained, without a drop remaining. The core of the evil spirit trapped inside began to shake as well. The primordial god Silk no longer posed any threat to the evil spirit at all now that all its power had run out. At this moment, Jian Chen became determined. He grabbed the strand of golden thread before him, and the chaotic force within him began to surge, channeling into the primordial god Silk without holding back at all. It was transformed into the primordial god Silk's power. Everyone, pour all your origin energy and saint force into the golden thread. This is the last thing we can do. Even if we can't destroy the core of the crisis, we have to deal a heavy blow to it. Even if this won't save us from death, we can't let the core of the crisis have it easy. Jian Chen's voice rang out across the world. Not only did it spread throughout the entire Tianyuan continent, it even reverberated in the Beast God Continent, Wasteland Continent, and the Sea Realm. At that moment, his voice could be clearly heard by the world. Many Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters raised their heads toward the distance on the Tianyuan continent, in the direction of the voice. They were extremely stern. Among them, the people who possessed specific backgrounds had already known part of the secret. Hence, when they saw the golden threads that basically filled up the world, they could already sense that the battle had developed to an extremely horrible level, so horrible that it required the power of even them, people who had not reached sainthood. At that moment, many people slowly held on to the golden thread and poured their saint force into it without any hesitation with heavy hearts. Of course, there were some Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on. However, they could sense the undefiable will within the voice that boomed through the world, actually making them feel like they had to obey. They grabbed the golden thread whether they wanted to or not and offered up their energy. At that moment, there were not only just Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who were channeling all their saint force into the golden threads. Even those below Earth Saint Master did the same. They did not have a lot of saint force and their saint force was extremely weak, but upon accumulation, it still became a formidable power. Chapter 1626. The bloodline of the Forsaken Saints. Among them were also some strong-willed people who were not affected by Jian Chen's voice, as well as those who just stared at the golden thread that had appeared from the distance in confusion. However, the gentle sound of a zither rang out shortly afterwards, and those people who did not do anything yet immediately became dazed. Soon, they extended their hands and grabbed the golden thread like robots, pouring their saint force into it without holding back at all. This did not just happen on the Tianyuan continent. Even the many fighters from the Wasteland Continent, Beast God Continent, Sea Realm, and the various islands offered up their power. They poured all of it into the primordial god Silk, and it was quickly converted into the primordial god Silk's power. The crack in outer space grew wider and wider as the evil power hiding within the blood-red cloud slowly glided out. It slowly traveled towards the core of the evil spirit. The evil spirit could probably fuse with its second power in just a few seconds if this continued. Fortunately, only a fragment of the evil spirit's soul controlled the second source of power. The fragment of its soul was unable to use the tremendous power for battle, so the second core of power would only demonstrate its might after fusing with the core of the evil spirit. All the sainthood and origin realm experts rapidly paled on the battlefield. They had channeled all their saint force and origin energy into the primordial god Silk as fast as they could, so they became weaker and weaker due to the loss of energy. After receiving the support of such great power, the primordial god Silk began to glow once more. At the same time, as more and more origin energy in Saint Force was converted into its own power, the golden threads shone brighter and brighter, becoming more and more dazzling. Eventually, it shone like the sun, illuminating the entire world. No, no. How can this damned power appear again? I hate this power, I hate this presence. Hurry up and descend, my second half. Let us fuse together. A mental pulse filled with dread and urgency spread out from the core of the evil spirit. Even though the core was indestructible, it was also the evil spirit's weakest form. In its current state, it was able to ignore everything from Jian Shen and the others, but it was unable to ignore the power of the primordial god silk. The primordial god silk's power was able to harm its so-called indestructible core. The core of the evil spirit trembled more and more violently. It had finally suffered heavy wounds from the primordial god silk, dispersing at a visible rate. However, the rate of dispersion was basically nothing compared to the entire core. Making the entire core dissolve would probably take 10 days at the very least. However, the evil spirit's second half of power had already begun to descend from outer space. It enveloped the Tianyuan continent as a huge blood-red cloud, dyeing the sky red. Blood seemed to splatter across the entire world. The second half would fuse with the evil spirit in just a few seconds at this rate. Jian Shen, the Spirit King, all the Origin Realm experts, and the Sainthood experts raised their heads at the sky at this moment. They stared at the descending cloud. All their eyes were filled with an unwillingness to accept reality, but more people had gazes filled with despair. They all understood that they would all be doomed once the evil spirit fused with the second half of its power. Jian Shen smiled miserably. He had never thought that he would lose his life due to this crisis. It also filled him with a refusal to accept the truth. There were some receival protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints who had considered escaping this world to the Saints' world. However, the opening of the tunnel could not be completed in such a short amount of time, and it was impossible for the evil spirit to just let them go. Fairy Hao Yu had already stood up in the bright moon divine hall. Her eyes shone, and her face was stern. She said to Jian Shen, give up on this world. I'll forcefully open the passage to the saints' world by burning my soul. You can take those close with you to leave with me. If you don't go now, it'll be too late. Fairy Hao Yu had already made up her mind to leave by herself at any time. However, she needed to use a secret technique if she wanted to leave alone, and she was not willing to pay the price so easily. She would also suffer the risk of having her soul disperse entirely. After all, she no longer possessed her peak strength. She was just a fragile soul now. If she could persuade Jian Shen, she would get Jian Shen to take the Bright Moon Divine Hall and leave this place even if she had to burn her soul to forcefully open the passage. The price she would pay would lessen drastically as well. If Jian Shen plans on being stubborn, I have to leave by myself even if I have to take the huge risk with my life, thought Fairy Hao Yu. The Tianyuan continent reveres me as their human sovereign. I carry the burden of that name, so how can I abandon them and leave all by myself? Not to mention that I am not one who fears death, Jian Shen declined firmly. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared on the top of the elven god tree that remained rooted in the territory of the elves. She was the greatest god king of the god clan, Adriana. There's no more hope for this world. Looks like I can only abandon the clansmen here and leave with the war god, Adriana murmured to herself. The blood-red cloud rapidly descended from the sky. It radiated with a tremendous pressure. Meanwhile, all the Origin Realm and Sainthood experts from the two worlds clenched the primordial god silk tightly in their hands. They were filled with a strong sense of refusal to give in. At this moment, a saint ruler from the world of Forsaken Saints actually cut his hand as he had used too much power. Blood immediately began to flow and dripped onto the primordial god silk. It was actually silently absorbed. The section that the saint ruler held onto began to shine brightly the moment the primordial god silk absorbed the blood. It was even brighter than other parts. However, it was not that obvious, making it impossible to tell with the naked eye. However, Jian Shen had already refined the primordial god silk, so he had established a connection with the threads long ago. he was able to catch any changes to the primordial god silk. He became stunned when the blood was absorbed and immediately turned his eyes towards the saint ruler from the foreign world. Jian Xiaochen's eyes immediately began to shine when he saw the saint ruler's cut hand. Blood can actually boost the power of the primordial god silk? But I've clearly already tried it before. The blood of my chaotic body doesn't cause any reactions from the primordial god silk, Jian Chen thought. He found it to be rather doubtful, but he still immediately gave out an order: everyone, cut open your hand and drip your blood onto the primordial god silk. Quite a few people obeyed immediately, cutting open their hands and letting their blood drip onto the primordial god silk. There was a portion of them whose blood did not fuse into the primordial god silk, but the primordial god silk absorbed the blood of the others. The primordial god silk immediately began to shine much brighter after absorbing the blood, glowing with an even more radiant gold. The changes to its luminance could be discovered with a single glance, and it became even more effective against the core of the evil spirit. It's the world of forsaken saints. The blood of their fighters actually has a wondrous effect on the primordial god silk. Not only can the primordial god silk absorb their blood, but their blood seems to be extremely nourishing to the primordial god silk. However, the blood from the fighters of our world has no effect. Jian Chen immediately beamed in surprise and cried out involuntarily when he discovered this. The bloodline of the people from the world of forsaken saints is not simple, the sword spirits murmured as well. The Spirit King's eyes narrowed, and he immediately cried out, "Quick, all forsaken saints, immediately let your blood flow and let the primordial god silk absorb it. This is the only hope to stop the crisis of the world." With that, the Spirit King cut open his hand before everyone else and let his blood fuse into the primordial god silk. The other people from the world of forsaken saints did not hesitate either. They all cut open their hands as if their final hopes laid on that and offered up their blood. As expected, the primordial god silk absorbed all of the blood from the forsaken saints. It did not leave a single speck. Immediately, the primordial god silk exploded with light, and its powers rapidly recovered. The evil spirit cried out miserably with the strengthening of the primordial god silk. Its core rapidly dispersed, clearly receiving great damage. Jian Chen glanced at the sky. The cloud of blood had already arrived above his head and would fuse with the core of the evil spirit in just a few seconds. At a time like this, the primordial god silk was unable to wipe out the evil spirit's core no matter how powerful it became. There's not enough time. Jian Chen's heart sank heavily. Chapter 1627, A God King's Assistance. At this moment, a green light shot over from the distance at an unbelievable speed. An illusionary tree had arrived in a single moment. Its tremendous presence of life permeated the surroundings and stopped the cloud of blood from descending. When the cloud of blood came into contact with the illusionary tree, it actually came to a halt. "I'll sacrifice 30% of my life force to stop the evil spirit's power and buy time for you. However, in my current form, 30% of my life force is nowhere near as great as 30% from when I was at my peak condition, so it won't be able to earn that much time. You have 1 day at most. If you can't destroy the evil spirit's core in a day's time, then I can only leave here with the war god." Adriana's voice rang out in Jian Chen and the Spirit King's mind. The Origin Realm experts of the two worlds only saw an illusionary tree that levitated and shone with endless green light, stopping the descent of the evil spirit's power. They did not hear Adriana's words. Jian Chen immediately became overjoyed when he heard her words. Adriana was far more powerful than he had ever imagined. He originally thought that Adriana did not even have the power to interfere. She had been reduced to a soul after all, so no matter how powerful she was in the past, she would have become extremely weak. At the same time, Adriana was a god king from a higher world. Her status was more than enough for her to view those below her as ants. Why would she care about the lesser organisms of the Tian Yuan continent? He had already witnessed this from Protector Shui. Protector Shui had ended an entire era in the past after all. However, he never thought that even though Adriana clearly had the power to take Tai Ta away, she did not do so. Instead, she sacrificed 30% of her life force to help them earn a day's time. Jianshan felt rather surprised that a mighty god king would be willing to pay such a great price to assist people that appeared to be ants in her eyes, even after she herself had ended up in such a miserable state. But regardless of all that, Adriana's actions were a great kindness towards the 4 races of the Tian Yuan continent and the various lives in the world of forsaken saints. A gleam of light flashed across the Spirit King's eyes. He gazed deeply in the direction of the wasteland continent before looking at the illusionary tree that had stopped the descent of the evil spirit's power. The light in his eyes flickered a little before he devoted himself to pouring his blood into the primordial god silk. At the same time, he revolved his cultivation method to quickly replenish the blood he had just lost. What is this? There is actually a terrifyingly tremendous power that can go against the crisis of the world? All the Origin Realm experts from the 2 worlds gazed at the sky. They stared at the ball of resplendent green light in complete shock. They were not the only ones who reacted this way. All the sainthood experts from the 2 worlds stared at the sky as well. All their gazes gathered on the illusionary tree hovering in the sky as they became both shocked and delighted. That seems to be the elven god tree? No, that's impossible. The tree may be extraordinary and displayed great power in the ancient times, but it's only equivalent to saint emperors. How did it stop the terrifying, evil power? The Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent understood the origins of the tree. Disbelief covered their faces. That's the elven god tree. Since when did their divine tree become so powerful that it can stop the evil power? Even Sovereign Jian Chen and the Spirit King from the world of forsaken saints can't accomplish that. The sainthood experts from the 100 races all stared at the tree in the sky in shock. Disbelief was plastered on all of their faces, and some of them even rubbed their eyes out of doubt. They suspected that they had seen an illusion. The elven god tree had existed for a very long time. The various races from the 100 races were all familiar with its existence, but since when did it become so powerful? All of them became even more shocked and they sensed the unimaginably dense life force from the tree. The life force was just too tremendous, completely exceeding the understanding of many people. They could even vaguely feel that it could compete with the evil power. Quick, don't waste time. We only have a day. If we don't destroy the core of the crisis in a day's time, we'll all die, the Spirit King said with a heavy voice. They could only rely on the forsaken saints to destroy the evil spirit because their bloodline was special. Only their bloodline could assist the primordial god Silk. At that moment, all the people from the world of forsaken saints that had come to the Tian Yuan continent got involved. All the sainthood experts, protectors, elders, and even the Spirit King offered up their blood to support the primordial god Silk. On the other hand, the people from the 4 races ran out of things to do as they were no longer of any use in the current situation. The primordial god Silk shone brighter and brighter before becoming a golden disk like the sun. It illuminated the entire world, outshining the blood-red sky and dyeing it golden instead. The core of the evil spirit trapped inside could no longer remain calm. It rampaged wildly as it shrieked out miserably. It was filled with pain. Its so-called indestructible core was shrinking bit by bit. Once it completely vanished, the evil spirit would cease to exist. This lasted for a half a day, and the evil spirit's core shrank by 1/3 of its size. The forsaken saints who had offered up their blood had all become pale long ago. They were haggard and many of the saint rulers and saint kings could not even maintain a stable footing. They were about to fall out of the sky at any time. Every single one of them had become extremely weak due to the severe loss of blood. Although their bodies constantly produced more blood, it was nowhere near as fast as the consumption rate. At the same time, it took a very large toll of their bodies to constantly produce new blood, severely exhausting their vital energies. Meanwhile, people constantly surged out of the tunnel connecting the Tian Yuan continent and the world of forsaken saints. These people had especially hurried over under the orders of the Spirit King to offer up their strength to fend off the crisis. Jian Chen looked around, and he gradually frowned. Half of the time they had already passed, but 2/3 of the evil spirit's core still remained. If this continued, they would not be able to destroy the evil spirit's core in time. Although people hurried over constantly from the world of Forsaken Saints, their strength was nowhere close to the people who had taken part in the battle in the very beginning. At the same time, the original saint rulers and saint kings from the foreign world would have to stop after 4 more hours because they had basically reached their limits and were almost bled dry. Chapter 1628, Courage to Face Death. Jian Shen was not the only person who recognized this problem. All the Origin Realm experts and sainthood experts noticed it as well. It was completely impossible for them to wipe out the core of the evil spirit in just a day's time. The bloodletting of the Forsaken Saints continued, but everyone had lost their excitement and hope from half a day ago. They all felt heavy and breathless inside once again, as if they were facing the end of the world. As a result, the atmosphere became extremely heavy. I am not a sole person back in the world of Forsaken Saints. There are several tens of thousand clansmen behind me. As the Patriarch, if I can't even protect my own clansmen, I can never live up to the name of Patriarch. If everyone, including me and my clansmen, cannot avoid death in the end, I must die on the front lines as the Patriarch and lay my life down to protect my people. A saint emperors from the world of Forsaken Saints suddenly began to laugh aloud. Soon afterwards, he suddenly burst into white flames. His body rapidly dissolved in the flames, turning into an even greater power of his bloodline, which was all channeled into the primordial god Silk. Mandalf. Some people cried out in sorrow. Mandalf was currently burning his own vital energies and his own body to assist in destroying the evil spirit's core. At that moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Mandalf. Everyone looked at him with admiration and respect, whether they were the experts of the 4 races or from the world of Forsaken Saints. Even if I die, I have to die before my clansmen. I will not be able to protect you anymore in the future. I shall be leaving first. Mandalf smiled. His body turned into ashes in the end under the white flames. Mandalf's right. We're out of options now. If we don't destroy this damn thing here, all of our people in the world of Forsaken Saints probably won't be able to avoid death once this thing fully recovers. Since I'll die either way, why don't I die for a purpose? Soon afterwards, another saint emperor from the foreign world stood forward and righteously spoke. Just like Mandalf, he began to burn his vital energies until he died. Even his body was reduced to ashes in the end. Their vital energies had been severely exhausted already, so they were probably unable to produce any more blood at all. Burning their vital energies and their bodies was akin to completely igniting the final sliver of their bloodline left in their bodies, offering up one last portion of power. Even their lives had turned into a part of the bloodline's power. At this moment, a saint emperor from the foreign world looked at Jian Shen and asked with clasped hands, Sovereign Jian Shen, did the ignition of their vital essences contribute to destroying this wretched thing? Jian Shen looked at the saint emperor. He saw calmness, the courage to face death, and firm determination. Jian Shen nodded sternly. He already knew the saint emperor's thoughts and plan. If that's the case, I don't need to worry, said the saint emperor. With that, white flames erupted from his body as well, and he was reduced to ashes in the end. Ha ha ha, the situation has already developed to a point like this. There's no need for everyone to fear death. Choosing to die willingly is a courageous death. If our sacrifice can save the lives of a quadrillion clansmen, they will always remain grateful to us. However, if we continue to fear death, we'll only be able to live for a few hours longer. Is there any point to that? An old man said loudly and sternly. He was also a saint emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints. Afterwards, the old man also ignited his vital energies in his body, burning to ashes. Perhaps due to the infectious atmosphere, more and more people from the world of Forsaken Saints gave heroic and righteous speeches before laying down their lives. There were not just saint emperors, but saint kings, saint rulers, and so on were included as well. Their sacrifice generated even greater power for the primordial god Silk, allowing it to glow dazzlingly. Jian Shen, the environment of our world is horrible. It's unsuitable for people below sainthood to live in. Many children and weaker clansmen die to the horrible conditions basically daily. One of the reasons that we came to your world was to move on to the saints' world, but we also sought a better environment for our people to settle down in. Although we have invaded your world in the past and made you suffer heavy losses, our race will use this opportunity to make it up to you. I, Gongxi Ming, am willing to lay my life down to stop the crisis. I only hope that you can give the weaker people of my race a habitable place if the crisis is averted. I will be filled with endless gratitude even in the afterlife. Gongxi Ming bowed deeply towards Jian Chen before erupting in white flames. He began to burn his vital energies as well. Gongxi Ming. Qing Jingyun stared at Gongxi Ming with many emotions. Her heart throbbed with indescribably bitterness as she watched her friend of several dozen millennia gradually approach death. Xiongzhong and the other protectors and elders, as well as all the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent, stared at Gongxi Ming. Their opinion of him underwent a drastic change, and their gazes became filled with admiration and respect. The battlefield sank into a deathly silence. Everyone was stern as they stared at Gongxi Ming. They felt extremely uneasy inside. Gongxi Ming was an elder of the Sacred Spirit Hall. He had reached returnance. His status could not be compared with those saint emperors, yet he actually chose to go down a path of no return right now. His courage and boldness had deeply touched everyone. Jian Chen was solemn. He bowed deeply toward Gongxi Ming, who was wrapped up in flames, and said hoarsely, I promise you that I will definitely fulfill your final wish if we avert this crisis. As if a great burden had been lifted from him, Gongxi Ming smiled faintly before turning into ashes. The sacrifice of a returnance expert immediately made the primordial god silk shine with even more resplendent light. Vaguely, a layer of flames seemed to roar and burn on its surface. Afterwards, more and more people from the foreign world laid down their lives. Another returnance elder from Ouyang Yangwen's faction chose to sacrifice himself after Gongxi Ming, along with 7 other receival protectors. They all turned into power that would conquer the evil spirit's core. Aside from the 9 Origin Realm experts, thousands of sainthood experts from the foreign world burned their vital energies as well. A layer of white flames coated them, allowing them to shine with the most resplendent light in their lives. They were sent off for the final journey in their lives under the gazes of the various experts. It was a brave and sorrowful scene. The movement infected countless people. All the sainthood and Origin Realm experts from the world of the Tian Yuan continent felt deeply shocked. Many of them even cried emotionally. Jian Chen hovered in the air as he looked at the people who laid down their lives one after another with a gaze that trembled slightly. He bowed deeply towards everyone. He was so touched inside that he was rendered speechless. All of you will be the heroes of our world. Your names will be passed down through the ages and be revered by every generation. Your clans and families will be protected by the Sacred Spirit Hall, the Spirit King proclaimed solemnly. Chapter 1629. Averting the crisis narrowly. All the people on the Tian Yuan continent's side currently felt deeply touched. They all stared at the people from the foreign world who laid down their lives to overcome the crisis with mixed emotions. Many of them felt admiration. They were enemies before and had fought many battles against each other, resulting in heavy losses. Their battles even caused the continent to crack into 4 pieces, resulting in inestimable damages. Many people among the 4 races held exceedingly deep hatred for the people from the foreign world because they had invaded their lands. They would have been able to avoid everything if these people had not invaded. However, these same people were giving up their lives one after another to save everybody. They burnt their bodies and all their vital essences, paying the price of death to force out every last strand of their bloodline's power. Their actions had deeply touched everyone from the Tian Yuan continent's world, causing their hatred towards the foreign world to dull. Unfortunately, only the bloodline of the Forsaken Saints was useful for the primordial god Silk. Otherwise, it would not just be them who would sacrifice themselves. The primordial god Silk shone with a golden glow, much brighter than ever before after receiving the power of the Sainthood and Origin Realm expert's bloodline. The golden light directly transformed into roaring golden flames, flickering with tongues of flames as it burnt away the evil spirit's core. Under the roasting of the golden flames, its so-called indestructible core dispersed faster and faster. In the end, it became smaller and smaller, weaker and weaker. The painful shrieks of the evil spirit rang out from within the core. With Adriana's life force blocking the second half of its power, the power temporarily could not fuse with the evil spirit, preventing it from regaining its peak strength. The primordial god silk that roared with golden flames trapped its core, so it could not escape. The evil spirit seemed to understand that it was doomed today. It roared and bellowed out in refusal, except its voice became weaker and weaker. It turned less and less audible under the flames from the primordial god silk. In the end, it completely vanished. The core that was known to be indestructible, to the point where even Jian Shen and the Spirit King could do nothing about it, had finally dispersed under the flames of the primordial god silk at that moment. Jian Shen, the Spirit King, and the Origin Realm experts in the surroundings all let out a breath of relief when they sensed that the evil presence from the evil spirit had disappeared. Many people smiled from managing to survive. Soon afterwards, more than 80% of the experts from the Tianyuan continent's world bowed towards the Forsaken Saints. They did not bow towards the living experts, but the people who had laid down their lives to avert the crisis of the world. The crisis still isn't over completely. There's still a fragment of its soul that remains, Jian Shen said gruffly. He looked at the sky and the blood-red mist that had basically engulfed the entire place with a demonic red light. It conflicted against the tree of life Adriana conjured with 30% of her life force, except the conflict had become extremely weak now that the core of the evil spirit had vanished. After all, only a fragment of the evil spirit's soul remained in the blood-red cloud. It was just too weak, unable to control the tremendous power at all. Even if the soul fragment possessed supreme power that could even overthrow the universe, it was unable to use it at all. With a thought, the two snapped strands of the primordial god silk shone with blinding light. It soared into the sky like two dragons as it burned with golden flames. They directly surged into the sky, entering the tremendous blood-red cloud in a seemingly unstoppable fashion. They planned on wiping out the soul fragment of the evil spirit in the cloud. Jian Shen slowly closed his eyes below. His soul seemed to have fused with the primordial god silk as he controlled it while weaving through the blood-red clouds. The blood-red clouds would begin to disperse wherever the primordial god silk went. Every strand of blood-like mist represented the evil spirit's unique evil power. It was extremely powerful, even enough to pose a life-threatening danger to Jian Shen and the Spirit King. However, the primordial god silk just happened to be effective against this power. Coupled with the fact that the evil spirit's soul fragment was unable to control the power, the primordial god silk was unstoppable as it moved among the mist. The evil spirit's soul fragment hid carefully in the blood-red cloud, but Jian Shen discovered it very soon. Immediately, he controlled the two strands and weaved them together, forming a huge net that covered a huge region. It trapped the evil spirit's soul fragment, and as the net shrank, the soul fragment ran out of places to flee. The soul fragment could only shriek miserably under the attack of the primordial god silk's power before dispersing. However, Jian Shen did not drop his guard. He continued to control the primordial god silk so it would travel through the blood-red cloud. He carefully sensed if there were any other traces of the evil spirit because he was uncertain if the fragment he had found earlier was the entire soul fragment that the evil spirit had left behind. If a single fragment slipped through his fingers, it would lead to endless trouble in the future once it matured. The primordial god silk had exhausted its golden flames, so the flames disappeared. Its golden glow gradually dulled as well. As it purified the blood-red cloud, its powers were rapidly consumed as well. Jian Shen searched through the blood-red cloud with the primordial god silk many times, only stopping once the primordial god silk had completely dulled and had less than 10% of its previous power. He believed that it was impossible for a fragment of the evil spirit's soul to evade his senses after such a tight search. After all, he had already purified a third of the blood-red cloud with the primordial god silk. The soul fragment was so weak, so it was impossible for it to hide from his careful search. Below, all the experts from the two worlds raised their heads to look at the sky. They gazed at the blood-red cloud, and some of them looked at Jian Chen from time to time. Their eyes would be filled with admiration and fear, as well as anticipation. All of them knew that there was still a fragment of the evil spirit's soul hiding within the blood-red cloud, and whether it could be destroyed or not would entirely depend on Jian Chen. They would have temporarily evaded the crisis of the world if the soul fragment still remained, but once it matured, the same crisis would happen all over again. At that time, they were unsure if they would have the power to stop it a second time. The Spirit King also sternly stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky. He knew that the core of the evil spirit had been wiped out, but they still had not truly claimed victory at this point. At this moment, the 2 strands of primordial god silk appeared from within the blood-red cloud, shining with a faint, golden luster. The 2 strands coiled around Jian Chen's wrist. At the same time, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. Exhaustion appeared on his face. Have you destroyed the soul fragment left behind by the crisis? The Spirit King arrived before Jian Chen and asked eagerly. Jian Chen exhaled deeply and smiled victoriously, yes. The final soul fragment of the crisis has been destroyed. Good, good. The sacrifice of so many people from my world was not in vain. It even included a few protectors and elders. The Spirit King smiled freely. Jian Chen did not speak loudly, but he did not try to hide it either. The weakest people present were saint rulers, but even with the distance between them, they clearly heard Jian Chen's words. Immediately, cheers rang out. Many people were filled with joy, but there were also others who sobbed sorrowfully and painfully. They had lasted to the end and survived, but they had lost many of their beloved friends and family in this battle. It was reasonable for them to be filled with grief. This battle was just too horrifying. Not only had many sainthood experts from both worlds fallen, even mortal realm fighters and ordinary people who did not cultivate saint force had died under the devouring powers of the evil spirit. Many cities that possessed populations in the millions or tens of millions became ghost cities. They were filled with lifeless corpses. Chapter 1630, A Bold Attempt. We've finally achieved victory. I never thought that the crisis of the world would be so terrifying, making us sacrifice so many experts to destroy it. It even included a few origin realm experts. Many people among the experts murmured gently. Many more people appeared dazed. Everything that had happened earlier felt like a dream. They had lived for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. Many of them had even learnt about matters from millions of years ago from old records. Basically, most of them knew about everything that had happened within the past million years. However, no matter how knowledgeable they were, everything that had happened today had completely overwhelmed their knowledge. A single crisis of the world had caused such great damage to the world of Forsaken Saints and the Tianyuan continent's world, almost even ending the 2 worlds altogether. Everyone felt shocked by this. Even though they had successfully survived, every single one of them understood extremely well just how narrow their survival was this time. This battle was destined to be passed down through the ages, written down in the records of various organizations to be remembered for all of eternity. The world of Forsaken Saints' contribution to the battle against the evil spirit had completely surpassed the Tianyuan continents. Tens of thousands of fighters from that world had died, all of them offering up their lives by burning their vital energies to force out all the power of their bloodline to support the primordial god Silk. They were even reduced to ashes, including the protectors and elders from the sacred spirit hall. As for those who survived, they were all pale-faced and haggard due to the excessive blood loss. Many had collapsed on the ground. It was the same with the Spirit King. He was even weaker than the fighters from his world. Not only was he the one who lost the most essence blood, but he still suffered from the intense backlash of forcefully using the second move of a will that splits the heavens in the battle against the evil spirit. In the end, not only did his vitality weaken, but he even sustained heavy wounds. His injuries were more severe than anyone else on the battlefield. Jian Chen also suffered very heavy injuries and was sometimes even more injured than the Spirit King. However, he possessed the chaotic body. Coupled with the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force, he was basically healing at all times, so his wounds never took a turn for the worse. Instead, he had mostly recovered already. Now that the crisis of the world has been averted, but the evil power caused by the crisis has not completely dispersed. How should we deal with this power? If we leave the power in the sky, it'll make people uneasy, the Spirit King said with a deep voice as he stared at the sky. However, he could not hide his current frailty. Jian Chen looked over as the Spirit King spoke. The blood-red clouds in the sky remained thick like a huge red carpet that blanketed the entire world. It dyed the entire world blood-red, and even the scorching sunlight could not penetrate its shroud. Jian Chen frowned at the sight of this. Even though the primordial god silk had dispersed a third of the evil spirit's power, whatever remained was still extremely tremendous to Jian Chen and the Spirit King. It completely exceeded their own strength. However, as the evil power was unable to be controlled, the tremendous power posed minimal risk or even no risk at all. However, completely destroying the remaining evil power would not be an easy feat for Jian Chen and the Spirit King. Senior Adriana, can you assist us in completely destroying this evil power left behind by the crisis of the world? Jian Chen sent a request for assistance towards the territory of the elves on the wasteland continent. The power of his primordial god silk had basically run out, so it would not be realistic for him to try to use the primordial god silk to purify the evil power. At the same time, many of the fighters from the world of Forsaken Saints would suffer from extremely severe after-effects from bloodletting so much and replenishing it time and time again. Obviously, he could not use the same method as before. After all, the evil spirit was destroyed now. The remaining evil power did not pose a great threat at all. I can only offer up 30% of my life force to assist you. Right now, only half of that 30% remains, which is not enough to destroy this power. However, I can use that life force to push the evil power into outer space, but I'll need your cooperation to do that. Adriana's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Her voice also possessed a certain sense of weakness. Clearly, losing 30% of her life force was a huge loss to her as well. Then I'll be troubling Senior, Jian Chen thanked gratefully. As long as the evil power was pushed into outer space, he would have time to slowly deal with it. I wonder if my chaotic body can absorb this evil power. If I can, this tremendously terrifying power will make my chaotic body. Jian Chen's eyes shone and he immediately became rather interested. Soon afterwards, Jian Chen and the Spirit King worked with Adriana to seal up the evil power with their absolute strength and slowly push it into outer space. By then, only around a tenth of the life force that Adriana had offered up remained. Your injuries are heavy. If you don't deal with them properly, you'll suffer permanent after-effects in the future. It'll affect your future cultivation. I'll gift my remaining life force to you, so you can heal. Just treat it as an act of kindness from me. However, I'm helpless towards the injuries of your soul, Adriana's voice rang out in the Spirit King's head. Shortly afterwards, her remaining life force turned into a tremendous energy that poured into the Spirit King's body. At that moment, the Spirit King became enveloped in green light. He healed at an unbelievable rate under the green light, and even the weakness in his expression rapidly vanished. In just a few seconds, the Spirit King returned to his state prior to his severe injuries. He healed so quickly that it had completely surpassed Jian Chen's combination of chaotic body and radiant Saint Force origin energy. After all, this was the life force of a God King. Even though it was not a lot, it was extremely terrifying. It could not be compared with Class 9 Radiant Saint Force origin energy. Thank you, Senior. I, Shenjian, will never forget your kindness. If I get the chance in the future, I will definitely repay this kindness. The Spirit King clasped his hands in Adriana's direction. Not only had Adriana's gift of life force made him recover from his wounds, but the remaining part had fused with his cultivation, becoming his own power. As a result, his strength advanced by quite a lot once more. If it were not for the limited laws of this world, he could step into godhood at any time. Now that the blood-red cloud that loomed over the world was gone, the radiant sun illuminated the ground once more. Jian Chen entered the cloud of evil power all by himself and attempted to absorb the power to see if he could do so or not. He wanted to refine the evil spirit's power into his own chaotic force. He did not take part in dealing with the aftermath on the Tian Yuan continent. There was no need for him to worry about this either. The four races all had their leaders, and even the humans had Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, and so on. Chapter 1631, Refining the Cloud. As soon as Jian Chen entered the blood-red cloud, he felt a tremendous pressure crush in from all directions as if mountains were pressed up against him. His body suddenly sank, and his movement speed became greatly affected. At the same time, a presence filled with evilness entered Jian Chen's head, affecting its soul. He felt like he had begun to hallucinate. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and the light in his eyes flickered. He concentrated and suppressed the hallucinations that the evil power triggered. Then the twin swords hovered above him and shone with azure and violet light, forming a screen around him. Chaotic force filled every inch of his body at that moment as well, working with the twin swords to keep out the pressure from the cloud. After all, the blood-red cloud had power equivalent to the evil spirit at its peak condition. Even though the powers of the primordial god Silk had purified a third of it, the remaining portion was still far greater than Jian Chen. If the consciousness of the evil spirit were still present, Jian Chen and the Spirit King would not be his opponent even if he could only control the remaining two-thirds of the power. Even though the evil spirit had been destroyed now, the blood-red cloud still pressured Jian Chen to a certain degree. Jian Chen did not approach the center of the cloud. Instead, he stopped in the outskirts after traveling 100 meters in. He sat down there sternly. Even though he knew the evil spirit had been destroyed, Jian Chen still did not dare to be careless in the blood-red cloud because the cloud's power was just too great. It had surpassed deity. He even wondered if gods could control powers as great as the cloud. Jian Chen sat in the blood-red cloud. He sucked in a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. He began to absorb the power in the cloud carefully. Jian Chen was uncertain whether his chaotic body could absorb this power as it was just too tremendous and possessed an extremely evil presence. He was even less certain whether the power would be detrimental or beneficial to him, so he did not act recklessly at all with the attempt this time. He only absorbed a tiny sliver of the power that was about the size of a needle. Jian Chen's body began to quiver violently when he absorbed the tiny sliver before he could even get to refining it. As soon as the power entered his body, it erupted with an extremely great might like gunpowder. The terrifying shockwaves almost severed all of Jian Chen's meridians. The sliver of power was just too great, to the point where Jian Chen almost failed to endure it with his 8th-layer chaotic body. Not to mention that he had only absorbed a needle-size amount of that power. If he had absorbed more than that in one go, he would become severely injured to the extreme. Jian Chen gritted his teeth and endured the excruciating pain silently. Every time his chaotic body progressed to a new layer, he would have to undergo the pain of refining his body. It would be torturous every time, so the pain from this tiny sliver of power could not be compared to it. It was nothing for Jian Chen to endure such pain. Chaotic force surged within Jian Chen's chaotic Niden. It produced strands of chaotic force as Jian Chen practiced his cultivation method, devoting himself to refining the sliver of power. Even though the power from the cloud was powerful, he was only refining a tiny sliver of it. Jian Chen refined it in just a short while. Jian Chen did not beam in joy at all after refining the sliver of power. Instead, he frowned. He opened his eyes slowly and murmured, "This sliver of energy has actually been refined to nothingness. It has brought me no benefits. Is it impossible to refine the power within the cloud? That's impossible. Chaotic force is a power of the highest level in the entire universe. Aside from Xianhuang Qi, there is no power that can rival chaotic force. Even Yin Qi and Yang Qi originate from chaotic force. Although my chaotic force is nowhere near true chaotic force, it should still exhibit some of the characteristics of true chaotic force. Although the power of the cloud is greater than the 8th layer chaotic force I possess right now, it's still a power without an owner. Logically speaking, there should be quite a high chance of me successfully absorbing and refining this power, Jian Shen quickly overthrew the thought that the chaotic body was unable to refine the power of the cloud. According to his understanding of chaotic force, it could absorb all energies and powers in the world. It was not classified amongst the 5 elements in the world. Of course, that was given that the power was within the range that his chaotic body could withstand. Jian Shen did not give up and continued to absorb and refine the power of the cloud. He became even more confident that his chaotic body could absorb the power of the cloud after his thoughts earlier. He would never consider such action if the power of the cloud was still under the evil spirit's control, but the power had now become dead, unable to put up any resistance at all. That was enough for the possibility of refining the power for himself. With the progression of every layer, the energy required by the chaotic body would increase by several folds, making it an extremely power-hungry cultivation method. He had reached the 8th layer now, so the number of resources Jian Shen required to reach the 9th layer was simply unimaginable. The Tianyuan continent would never possess enough of what he needed. If the power left behind by the evil spirit could help his chaotic body progress, it would be Jian Shen's fortune, even if it was not enough for him to reach the 9th layer. He could never pass by this opportunity. Jian Shen also failed with his 2nd attempt. The sliver of power he had absorbed was forcefully refined into nothingness within him, leaving nothing behind at all. His chaotic body did not grow either. Jian Shen did not become discouraged and continued. However, his 3rd attempt resulted in failure as well. He failed the 4th time. He failed the 5th time. Finally, after 5 attempts, Jian Shen succeeded. The needle of power he had absorbed had finally been refined into a strand of chaotic force, becoming his own power. I understand now. It's impossible for every strand of the cloud's power to be refined into chaotic force due to its special characteristics. I need to collect the essence, but the difficult part is that the essence can't be found so easily. Jian Shen's eyes shone. As long as he could refine the cloud's power into chaotic force, it was something worth celebrating over, even if it would take a long time. Even though he would fail many times during the refinement of the cloud's power, as long as he could refine a single strand of it, his chaotic force would grow slightly. The increase would not be drastic, but it would be equivalent to years or even decades of absorbing the energy of the world. Chapter 1632, The Push for Territory. 1. Jian Shen went mad afterwards. He completely devoted himself to cultivation. He wanted to increase his strength as much as possible now that a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity had presented itself before him. He paid no attention to the various matters the aftermath of the various battles caused. He sent a single message to his friends and family before entering seclusion, completely sealing himself off in the blood-red cloud. Only after receiving news that Jian Shen had entered seclusion did the people of the 2 worlds begin to disperse. The people who left first were from the 4 races. Some of the severely injured people left first, returning to their clans to heal. However, there were also many fighters who had lost close friends and family who remained. They gazed at the battlefield sorrowfully as they struggled to dispel their pain. They remained there for quite some time. In the blink of an eye, a portion of the people had left. They all originated from the Tianyuan continent's world. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints all remained on the spot. None of them dared to leave without the Spirit King's orders. The Spirit King was the supreme ruler of the world of Forsaken Saints. If that world was an empire, he would be the emperor. They were different from the 4 races on the Tianyuan continent. Although each race possessed their own origin realm experts, they did not restrain the people of their race, granting them more freedom. I never thought Jian Shen would actually choose to enter seclusion at a time like this. Are you really cultivating? Or are you escaping? The Spirit King murmured to himself nonchalantly as he gazed at the blood-red cloud in outer space. Whatever. Since you want to cultivate, then we'll wait until you emerge. I just happen to need some time to heal the wounds of my soul as well, thought the Spirit King. Then he looked away at the people from his world who remained. He said, all of you return. The protectors and elders will remain on the Tianyuan continent to recover. Once you have, cooperate with the Tian-Yuan continent in dealing with the aftermath. All the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints responded. Then the sainthood experts passed through the tunnel to return to their world. The Origin Realm experts all stayed behind. They completely understood that the Spirit King had ordered them to stay behind because he was ready to take up some territory in this world. Although Jian Chen was the greatest contributor in averting the crisis of the world, they played a significant role as well. It could even be said that if the experts had not given up their lives willingly, everyone would still face death and defeat in the end, even with Jian Chen's presence. Their world had paid such a heavy price to stop the crisis of the world, so they would never drop the matter if the Tian-Yuan continent did not give them satisfactory compensation. We will record the names of the clansmen who burned their vital essences. Do not miss a single one of them. We will set up a memorial tablet for them in the Sacred Spirit Hall, and their clans and family will receive the protection of the Sacred Spirit Hall, the Spirit King ordered. Yes, Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts all responded. Our continent wants a copy of that list as well. Their major contribution to stopping the crisis of the world has filled us with admiration. We want their names and their deeds to be passed down forever. They are worthy of all our respect. Shengguan Mu'er flew over slowly and said solemnly. Without a single doubt, she had become the second sovereign of the humans with her strength at mid-returnance. Anything she said or did would obviously be enough to impact all the humans of the Tian-Yuan continent, and she was able to make the decision for some matters. The Spirit King looked at Shengguan Mu'er, and the light in his eyes flickered by an undetectable amount. After a moment of silence, he said, "You're also a human from the Tian-Yuan continent, and your strength is only second to Jian Chen. You can represent the Tian-Yuan continent. Since Jian Chen isn't present right now, why don't you represent your world and come to an agreement with mine?" Shengguan Mu'er was interested. She had no idea what this so-called agreement would entail and did not even know whether an agreement like this was supposed to exist or not. However, she did understand that the Spirit King wanted territory on this world by using the contributions of his people as a reason. He wanted a safe place for his people. The world of Forsaken Saints obviously possessed a horrible natural environment, to the point where countless people would just die due to the environment alone every year. It was unsuitable for the habitation of weaker cultivators, while the natural environment of the Tian-Yuan continent was like heaven to the weaker cultivators. As a result, the world of Forsaken Saints did not only attack the Tian-Yuan continent for a passage to the Saints' world, but so that the weaker people of their race could have a safe place to live. Unfortunately, I will have to disappoint the Spirit King. Although I am a human of the Tian-Yuan continent, I don't live on the continent. I have always stayed on Three Saint Island, which lies among the oceans. As this matter relates to the agreement between the Tian-Yuan continent and your world of Forsaken Saints, how can I, an outsider, make the decision? It's best if you wait for Jian Chen to return, said Shengguan Mu'er. The Spirit King frowned and stared deeply at the huge blood-red cloud in outer space once again. He said indifferently, "If that's the case, then I'll wait for Jian Chen to emerge." Xiongzhong. I am present. Xiongzhong immediately bowed towards the Spirit King nearby. He was extremely polite. Once you and the others recover, discuss with the representatives of the Tian-Yuan continent about how the territory will be divided. Come up with a plan first and Jian Chen and I will make the final decision, the Spirit King ordered in a way where Xiongzhong could not decline. Yes, Spirit King, Xiongzhong replied politely. The Spirit King no longer remained after that order. He left as a streak of light, but he did not immediately return to the world of Forsaken Saints. Instead, he went to the territory of the elves first to personally thank Adriana. Only then did he return to the world of Forsaken Saints and work on healing his soul. He had no idea whether he would be fighting with Jian Chen over territory once Jian Chen had emerged. If there really would be a battle, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Jian Chen with his injured soul, so he needed to recover to his peak condition before Jian Chen emerged. He would not back down even in the slightest regarding territory, even if he came from the same world as Jian Chen. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gui Hai Dao, and the others all revealed rather ugly expressions when they saw how the Spirit King had ordered his elders and protectors to remain on the Tianyuan continent. All of them arrived by Shangguan Mu'er's side, hoping that she would remain on the continent to watch over them. After all, now that Jian Chen was gone, they felt extremely pressured in the face of so many foreign origin realm experts. On the other side, when the foreign origin realm experts saw how Yang Lai and the others wanted Shangguan Mu'er to watch over the continent, their faces all changed slightly. There was extremely deep fear in their gazes towards Shangguan Mu'er. Don't worry, everyone. I will always keep an eye out for the activity of the Tianyuan continent at all times. If you need me, I will immediately hurry over. Shangguan Mu'er declined their offers to stay. Then she looked towards the crowd and saw Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Shangguan Aojin. A sliver of gentleness finally appeared in her cold eyes when she saw Shangguan Aojin. She said, Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, let's go. Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu took part in the battle as well. Currently, their faces seemed rather weak and exhausted. They immediately flew out from the crowd when they heard Shangguan Mu'er's words. Under the envious and admiring gazes of many, they returned to Three Saint Island with Shangguan Mu'er. At the same time, a very cold gaze landed on Shangguan Aojin's back. It was filled with disdain. This gaze belonged to a young man with a rather striking appearance. His arrogance was obvious with his face. Even though he appeared to be rather weak, it was still not enough to hide the noble presence he possessed from being born and raised as a part of a large clan. The young man was the young master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Su. Close to 20 years had passed, but Changyang Su seemed exactly the same as before. His appearance and temperament was no different. The only thing that had changed was his strength. Now, he was no longer a great saint master but a saint ruler. Of course, he had only become a saint ruler through the usage of countless precious heavenly resources from the Changyang clan. As the young master of the Changyang clan, along with the fact that he was spoilt by the authoritative Changyang Ba, Changyang Su was able to use all the resources that the Changyang clan had to offer without any restraint. He had received the personal guidance from many saint emperors, which was why he managed to reach saint ruler at such a young age. He was different from Shangguan Aojin. Shangguan Aojin always maintained a low profile and never tried to publicize himself. Although there were a few rumors about the young island master of Three Saint Island in recent years, the rumors vanished gradually as he maintained his low profile. On the other hand, Changyang Su came from a glorious clan and possessed a terrifying background. His status immediately skyrocketed after becoming the young master of the Changyang clan, drawing the attention of countless people across the continent. Coupled with his great talent for cultivation, his name as the young master of the Changyang clan gradually spread across the entire world. His fame would be able to rival Jian Chen's one day. This was all because Changyang Su had not used a violet cloud peach to become a saint ruler. Changyang Su stared at Shangguan Aojin's back and clenched his fist tightly. He thought, young island master, you'll understand my power soon. You've just consumed a violet cloud peach from my uncle, that's all. Do you really think you can beat me with just that? Now that my uncle has returned, I'll have a violet cloud peach for myself very soon as well, and it'll be of the highest grade. I'll personally go to Three Saint Islands to challenge you after I consume it. I will flatten you below my feet. I'll let you understand that the only reason why I was defeated by you all those years ago was because I had yet to consume a violet cloud peach as well. Changyang Su felt plenty of resentment towards Shangguan Aojin. Only he knew that he had always been stifled by the young island master who was similar in age to him, despite how glorious he appeared to be before others. In the past years, he had challenged the young island master more than once, but every time, he would suffer a terrible defeat. Even after becoming a saint ruler, he still could not withstand a single punch from the young island master. Chapter 1633, The Push for Territory, 2. With Shangguan Mu'er's departure, the experts from the Sea Race and the 100 Races all left the Tianyuan continent with the Sea Goddess and Tai Ta. They returned to their territories to recover strength. The battle earlier was fierce and close. Although they had achieved victory in the end, all the Origin Realm experts from both worlds were greatly exhausted. The elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints were affected in particular. They had pushed their bodies beyond their limits to produce blood, so they had exhausted themselves far more than the Origin Realm experts from the world of the Tian Yuan continent. Although the Sea Goddess and Tai Ta left the Tian Yuan continent and had returned to their respective territories, they were the same as Shangguan Moor, watching over the situation on the continent carefully from a very long distance away. They remained cautious against the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints. The White Tiger did not return to the Beast God continent with the magical beasts. Instead, he remained on the Tian Yuan continent, returning to Flame City with Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. They stayed in Flame City. Although he was the god and sovereign of the magical beasts, the White Tiger felt nothing towards the Beast God continent, let alone any sense of belonging. Instead, Flame City was Jianchen City, so he felt a greater sense of belonging by staying there. With so many Origin Realm experts remaining on the Tian Yuan continent when Jianchen was not present, the entire continent felt tremendous pressure. The Tian Yuan continent just happened to need the presence of more Origin Realm experts from their own world, so having the White Tiger, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Ling personally remain in Flame City had increased the city's status. Sanxiong obviously handled the matters on the Beast God continent's end. He was experienced, so it was obviously a piece of cake for him to manage these affairs. Although the White Tiger possessed strength at the Origin Realm, it had no experience in leadership at all. After all, it was still young and had not gone through all the aspects of life yet. Although Xiao Ling was the barrier spirit of Mercenary City and had protected the place quietly for the past 1,000,000 years, Mercenary City was now destroyed, along with the seal deep beneath the city that she guarded. She no longer had orders to carry out, so she was no longer restrained to any particular place or activity. Coupled with the fact that Xiao Ling was not close to anyone aside from Jianchen in the current world, she would obviously settle down in Flame City. Perhaps even Xiao Ling herself had not realized it, but she had already begun to treat Flame City as her own home because her older brother Jianchen built this city. She felt a sense of closeness by staying there. Ada, Air, Asen, and ACI currently supported each other as they stood on the cracked earth. They all gazed towards the blood-red cloud in outer space. The four of them had all broken through to the Origin Realm thanks to the 4 strands of sword chi hidden in Jianchen's arm during the fight against the evil spirit. Then they stood in a sword formation and erupted with a devastating blow that heavily injured the evil spirit. As the formation was just too powerful, they suffered an intense backlash after using it with their strength at the Origin Realm. As a result, the 4 of them had even temporarily lost the ability to levitate. They stood on the ground like ordinary people. However, no one would ever underestimate the 4 of them. Even though everyone could sense just how weak they had become, they had still reached the Origin Realm after all. They had become people who could reign supreme. Their status was no longer the same as the past. Congratulations on your breakthroughs to the Origin Realm. Although the battle has ended now, a threat still exists. Please come to the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City to heal. We will provide you with the best medicine so that you can make a full recovery as soon as possible. An Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gue Haidao arrived before the 4 brothers and invited them. The 3 of them could already tell that the 4 brothers were the most injured people among the Origin Realm experts. They would even struggle to display their strength at the Origin Realm with their current conditions. It was to the point where even Saint Emperors were enough to threaten them. Moreover, there were many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints present on the Tian Yuan continent, so they would pose an extremely great threat to them. As a result, for their safety, An Lai, Gue Haidao, and Feng Xiaotian had invited the 4 brothers to the Supreme Divine Hall in Mercenary City. In the current world, there was probably no place safer than the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City apart from 3 Saint Island. Even Flame City was not safer. Although the island mistress of the 3 Saint Islands always observed the Tian Yuan continent closely, the 4 brothers were just too weak. If people from the world of Forsaken Saints decided to lay their hands on the 4 brothers at this time, probably even the island mistress would not necessarily be able to make it in time. Ada shook his head. We may be heavily injured, but we're not as miserable as we seem on the surface. We still have some power to protect ourselves. Farewell. Ada's voice was weak, but there was also great determination in his voice. The four brothers left. They supported each other as they flew through the sky towards the distance as if they could fall at any time. Yang Lai, Thong Xiaotian, and Gue Haidao remained standing on the spot as they watched the four brothers leave. They found it rather regretful that they had failed to get the four brothers to stay and protect the Tian Yuan continent. At the same time, they felt some worry. They worried that once the four brothers had traveled some distance, the origin realm experts of the foreign world would take advantage of them since they were weakened. However, the four brothers insisted on leaving, so they could not help them out even when they wanted to. Jian Shen was no longer present on the current Tian Yuan continent and Shangguan Mu'er had returned to Three Saint Island. They would not be able to put up a fight at all against the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints with their remaining origin realm experts. In fact, they even felt extremely fortunate that the elders and protectors did not try to lay their hands on them. Eldest brother, that tiny tower Jian Shen held. After leaving, ACI looked at Ada and said carefully through a communication technique. His gaze seemed slightly dazed. Ada raised his head once more to look at the blood-red cloud in outer space. He said to the three others through a communication technique as well, "It's rather unimaginable that the four of us were able to break through to the origin realm. That foreign power clearly doesn't belong to us, yet it seems to come from the same origins as us, making it feel like it originally belonged to us. At the same time, we learned a few new sword formations and sword techniques, and their origins are all mysterious as well. We clearly didn't know them before, but when we used it, it was like we had used them before." Aside from that, the tiny tower in Jian Chen's hand made me feel a sense of familiarity for some reason as well. I feel like everything that happened to us this time is connected to Jian Chen. We have to go through Jian Chen to find the answer to this and settle all our doubts. However, Jian Chen has gone into seclusion within the evil power. We can't see him even if we want to, so let's find a place to heal first. Chapter 1634, The Push for Territory, 3. Let's go with what eldest brother said. Let's find a place to go into seclusion and recover. I've also gained some foreign information in my head after breaking through and need some time to digest it. All the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints gathered together. None of them had left. All the origin realm experts from the world of the Tian Yuan continent were cautious of them at all time, and they were no different. They were cautious about Shangguan Mu'er attacking them secretly at all times. All of them had personally experienced Shangguan Mu'er's immense power on the tip of the world mountains. They were in their peak conditions back then and possessed two early reciprocity experts by their sides, but they only managed to become locked in a stalemate against her. Now that Ouyang Yangwen was gone and a few of the elders and protectors were dead, their strength had decreased drastically. If Shangguan Mu'er attacked them at a time like this, they had no doubt that she would be able to heavily injure all of them with ease. All of them felt like they were skating on thin ice by staying on the Tian Yuan continent with the hidden threat of Shangguan Mu'er. They would be doomed if they were just slightly careless. Let's go as well. We cannot become separated during this time at all to prevent unforeseen accidents. I'll take care of the god-slaying formation. As soon as Shangguan Mu'er comes for us, we can use it against her, Xiongzhong said to the elders and protectors behind him through a communication technique. He was stern. The elders and protectors nodded sternly as well. Now that the Spirit King was gone, they felt a strong sense of danger. Although they knew that both Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er would never lay their hands on them with their contributions to averting the crisis, they could not help but remain wary. The thought of attacking and killing a few origin realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent had crossed their minds as it would benefit them during the upcoming discussion. However, they dismissed it without any hesitation as soon as they thought of the idea. The origin realm experts in this world would pose no threat towards them. If Shangguan Mu'er did not exist, they really might have considered doing something like that. The Spirit King could obviously handle Jian Chen. However, Shangguan existence prevented them from acting recklessly in this world. Some of them had even begun to believe that in the next few days, they would be extremely fortunate if Shangguan did not decide to attack them. The aftermath was dealt with in an orderly fashion, while the ruined continent gradually recovered its peace. The various organizations and experts on the Tianyuan continent all went quiet with the peace after the battle as well. They had participated in the battle against the foreign world, and then they had taken part in the battle against the crisis of the world. They had been heavily injured long ago. Even the 10 protector clans that had existed for 1,000,000 years on the Tianyuan continent gradually began to decline. Along with the losses from battle, the balance of the Tianyuan continent changed as well. The 10 protectors' clans had all declined to a state that was never seen before. Aside from the Changyang clan, Pure Heart Pavilion, and Tyrant Blade School that remained influential, the 7 other protector clans had almost died out completely. They had lost all their Saint Kings and Saint Emperors. A protector clan without any of them was not even as great as a few ancient clans. Some of the more powerful ancient clans even showed signs of replacing these weakened clans as protector clans. The peaceful continent had basically returned to the age where Saint Ruler and Saint Kings hid from view. The crisis of the world had been averted, and the problems the Yinyang Saint Rock caused had been completely resolved. Without the effects of the rock, the laws of the world gradually approached completion, making cultivation even easier than the past. Even the origin energy that had disappeared for countless years began to appear again, making it much easier for cultivators to break through among sainthood. It even gave saint emperors the hope of reaching the origin realm. As a result, many sainthood experts chose to enter seclusion at this time. As they recovered their strength, they attempted to increase their absolute powers as well. The only thing that remained the same was the weaker mortal realm cultivators. For survival, or for cultivation resources and methods, they continued to throw themselves at magical beasts or other humans. They fought hard and devoted themselves just for a better tomorrow. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed by peacefully. Huge stone tablets were erected in many cities across the continent. A mysterious power protected every single tablet, making them so tough that even saint emperors were unable to destroy them. Various foreign names were carved on one side of the tablets, while the other side explained that the sacrifice the owners of the names had undergone to stop the crisis of the world. Their bravery inspired the admiration of many. In those 3 years, rainbow clouds constantly blanketed the skies above the Tianyuan continent, Beast God continent, and Wasteland continent. Many people broke through during that time, either to Saint Ruler, Saint King, or Saint Emperor. However, there were still no people who stepped into the origin realm. Due to the sea goddess barrier, rainbow clouds did not appear in the depths of the sea, in the sea realm. However, there were still a lot of people who broke through. The world gradually recovered from the losses of the battles. With the departure of the ice goddess Hall, the coldness of the Arctic tundra rapidly dissipated, becoming a harmless world of ice and snow. A golden divine hall stood in the depths of that tundra. The divine hall seemed to be wholly made from gold and glistened in the sun. It was eye-catching in the snow-white world. All the elders and protectors gathered in the divine hall under Xiongzhong's lead. In the past year, apart from sending a protector to assist the Tianyuan continent in tidying up the aftermath, they all remained there recovering. They did not take a single step outside the divine hall, let alone roam the Tianyuan continent. Shangguan remained on their minds. She was like a sharp sword that hovered over their heads at all times. They had no idea when this sword would fall. Their fear for Shangguan had driven them far away from the Tianyuan continent and to the tundra to recover their strength. Chapter 1635, The Push for Territory, 4. After a year of rest, we've recovered to our peak condition. It's time for us to complete the orders that the Spirit King left us. As the only expert at reciprocity among the elders and protectors, he sat on the throne as he gazed at the elders and protectors below sternly. Although there's Shengguan Mu'er on the Tian Yuan continent who strikes fear in us all, I wonder if she'll interfere with the discussions with the Tian Yuan continent this time. However, be careful, everyone. The sacrifice of our many clansmen is directly responsible for averting the crisis of the world. At the same time, these are orders that the Spirit King personally passed down, so even if Shengguan Mu'er plans to interfere, we cannot back down at all, or get in the way of our world's interest. We've paid up enough for this world, so it's time for us to get something back. Let's set off. Xiongzhong said with a heavy voice. He waved his hand and all the protectors and elders left the divine hall, heading directly for the Tian Yuan continent. There was an extremely ordinary village near the Cross Mountains on the Tian Yuan continent. Some villagers lived there, surviving off subsistence farming. Although some of the younger people cultivated Saint Force, they were not very strong. They could only handle a few low-class magical beasts. An old man in coarse clothes currently swung a hoe in the fields. Dirt covered his hands as he bent over, carefully planting the seedlings of various vegetables. His old eyes were deep from witnessing the many matters in life. Houston, the people from the foreign world have come. Please come to Flame City immediately. At this moment, a voice rang out from very far away, booming in the old man's mind. The old man's face remained the same. After planting the seedling in his hand, he brushed off the soil on his hands and disappeared in the next moment. Only the simple metal hoe remained in the ground. Four old men sat on a huge rock, facing each other on a lone island in the vast ocean. They were discussing something. Eldest brother, my comprehension towards the Nirvanic sword formation has reached a new level. Aside from that, I've completely grasped 3 of the sword techniques that suddenly appeared in my mind after breaking through. I can't use the other ones because my strength is insufficient. Although my cultivation has not increased at all, my battle prowess is on a whole new level compared to a year ago. I feel that even by myself no one is my opponent among early receival if I use the sword techniques, ACI said. He was unable to contain his excitement. Ada nodded. In the past year, ACI was not the only one who had made plenty of progress. The 3 other brothers were the same, benefiting greatly. It's just a pity that Jian Chen is still in seclusion. I wonder when he'll emerge. Looks like we'll have to postpone finding him to resolve our queries indefinitely. Ada stared at the sky and sighed gently. Ada, Asen, and ACI, the people from the foreign world have arrived. Please come to Flame City immediately. At this moment, the same voice rang out in the minds of the 4 brothers, making their eyes narrow. After a moment of silence, ACI looked at Ada. He said, eldest brother, do we go? We live in this world. This world is our home, so how can we not go? Ada said righteously before standing up on the rock. He left together with his brothers. At the same time, the sea goddess in the sea realm and the war god on the wasteland continent received the message from the Tian Yuan continent as well. At that moment, all the origin realm experts in that world were mobilized simultaneously, and they all hurried towards the Tian Yuan continent. Just as Tai Ta was about to venture to the Tian Yuan continent, he suddenly stopped. After a moment of hesitance, he changed his direction and traveled towards the elves. The war god's arrival alerted all of the elves. They all went up to welcome him politely. In the end, Tai Ta entered the forbidden grounds of the elves under the Elven Queen's lead. Stay outside and wait for me, Tai Ta said to the Elven Queen with his deep, soft voice. Yes, sir. The Elven Queen replied politely and remained outside in an obedient manner. Tai Ta stood quietly before the elven god tree in golden robes, which made him seem awe-inspiring. His eyes shone as he carefully observed the tree of life that had existed for a very long time. At this moment, a strand of green life force condensed into an illusionary figure before the elven god tree. As her figure was just too blurry, her appearance was completely obscured, only the fact that she was female was evident. Adriana of the God clan greets the great war god. The illusionary woman dropped her knees to the ground and buried her head deeply towards the ground. She greeted Tai Ta by kneeling and bowing. She was extremely courteous. Tai Ta stood there as his golden robes ruffled gently in the breeze. He stared at the kneeling woman and asked, "Who are you?" Tai Ta already knew that the elven god tree was extraordinary, but his understanding towards it was not as great as Jian Chen's or the Spirit King's. At the very least, he still did not know Adriana's true identity, or that she had descended as a mighty god king just for him, the war god. Adriana hid nothing, telling him everything about her identity and origins. She immediately dumbfounded Tai Ta. "You're actually a god king? And the greatest god king of the god clan? Are you sure you're not trying to trick me?" Tai Ta asked in disbelief. Just the Spirit King who barely possessed the battle prowess of a deity had pressured the Tian Yuan continent so much. God kings would be insurmountable existences. Tai Ta found it unrealistic that a powerful god king would actually kneel towards him right now. "I have told the complete truth. I will never lie to the great war god." Adriana's forehead was basically stuck to the ground. Her respect came from the bottom of her heart and could not be faked. Tai Ta sucked in a deep breath and asked, "Why didn't I see you when I came here in the past? You didn't even say a single word to me. And why did you call for me earlier?" "The time was not ripe in the past, so I did not greet the war god. Please forgive me. I've requested an audience with the war god this time because of the spirit sages," said Adriana. "The spirit sages?" Tai Ta asked doubtfully. "The spirit sages are the people from the world of forsaken saints. Although I don't know how they've appeared here, they are the remnants of the spirits world and a large clan and race in the saints world. Although they've declined now, they still possess quite the heritage. I learnt that the war god is going to the Tian Yuan continent this time to negotiate with the spirit sages about territory, which was why I wanted to see the war god and beg him to pull the spirit sages to your side. It will be of great help to our god clan in the future," said Adriana. The busy city lord's estate in Mercenary City was now empty. Only the elite of the elite stood guard outside. Although the estate had the fewest guards it had ever seen, the power gathered there was the greatest in all of history. Using the city lord's estate of Flame City as a temporary place for negotiations was the agreement Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, the sea goddess, and so on came to. Not only did they want to ensure their safety during the negotiations this time, but they wanted to strike fear in the origin realm experts from the foreign world during the process as well. There were only 3 places in the world that could fulfill the 2 conditions in the current world. The first was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, the next was 3 Saint Island, and the last place was Flame City. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was a treasure with extremely great defensive capabilities. If they were to hold the negotiations there, the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would not be allowed to enter. As for 3 Saint Island, Yang Lai and the others had no confidence in persuading Shangguan Mu'er, so they could only set Flame City as the location. After all, the city's background was exceedingly shocking even though it only appeared to be an ordinary city in the eyes of the origin realm experts. Jian Chen personally founded it, and Jian Chen was its city lord. The city lord's estate was Jian Chen's estate in name. Coupled with Jian Chen's current strength, Flame City was no longer so ordinary. Even when the origin realm experts of the foreign world entered there, they needed to be obedient and could not act recklessly. Chapter 1636, The Push for Territory, 5. With Xiongzhong at the lead, close to 20 origin realm experts from the foreign world gathered in the city lord's estate. Only a portion of the people that had remained in this world came to city lord's estate of Flame City for negotiations. There were around a dozen more origin realm experts that remained outside the estate. If the negotiations went south, and they began fighting, these people could provide support. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Gui Haidao, Houston, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, the White Tiger, Tai Ta, the Sea Goddess, and the 4 brothers had all arrived for the Tian Yuan continent side. Aside from Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er, all the origin realm experts among the 4 races had gathered here. Everyone understood that the world of Forsaken Saints did not only want a part of the Tian Yuan continent's territory. They wanted territories from the 3 other races as well, so representatives of the 100 races, magical beasts, and sea race were all present for negotiations. Even when ignoring the fact that just some territory on the Tian Yuan continent would not be enough to satiate the tremendous population in the world of Forsaken Saints, the humans on the Tian Yuan continent would find it unfair if only they had to give up territory, while the other 3 races got to keep all of theirs. As a result, the matter of all the races handing over some territory was something that they had come to an agreement about much earlier on. However, they still needed to undergo further negotiations regarding the exact amount of land. They did not give up this territory because of the strength of World of Forsaken Saints. Instead, they made this choice because of the major contributions these people had towards averting the crisis of the world. Only the sacrifice of several tens of thousands of sainthood experts and a few origin realm experts had filled Jian Chen's primordial god silk with enough power to avert the crisis and save everyone else in the world. The origin realm experts of both worlds sat opposite each other in the city lord's estate. They were all stern. Hatred had been accumulated due to the invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints in the past, so the 2 sides did not say too much to each other when meeting this time. The atmosphere in the estate became rather suffocating. Xiongzhong glanced across the origin realm experts that represented the Tian Yuan continent's world. When he discovered that Shangguan Mu'er was not present, he could not help but feel relieved. After a moment of deliberation, he spoke first. May I ask if all your people have arrived? Can we start the negotiations? Aside from Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who observed the foreign experts in interest, the other people all glanced at each other seriously. The status of origin realm experts in the Tian Yuan continent's world was rather different from the origin realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. The entire foreign world seemed like a tremendous empire, while the Spirit King was their emperor and absolute ruler. The other origin realm experts were elders or protectors. If the Spirit King was not present, Xiongzhong, the only other person who had reached reciprocity, would become their leader. On the other hand, all the origin realm experts were revered among the 4 races. Even though the difference in their strength was drastic, they all shared similar statuses. None of them had the authority to order the others around. As a result, the first to answer Xiongzhong's question would hold a special type of significance. In the negotiations between the 2 worlds, the representative would naturally speak out first. Gradually, more and more gazes gathered on Tai Ta. As Shangguan Mu'er was not present, Tai Ta obviously became the most powerful person among them, so having him talk would be more suitable. Tai Ta discovered everyone's intentions and just closed his eyes, showing his intentions to everyone else. He understood extremely well that his talents lay in battle and not negotiations. It's a pity that Shangguan Mu'er isn't present. Houston, we'll let you take up the role as the representative for now. Does anyone have any objections? The sea goddess asked everyone through a communication technique. She directly named the old man in coarse clothes, who still had some soil on his hands, as their representative. Houston's strength was extraordinary, and he had experience in leadership. The Blood Sword sect had once shaken up the continent under his lead, so he was a resourceful person. Everyone clearly had no objections to having Houston represent them for now. If it was scheming, there would be no one present who could defeat Houston. It was just that Houston had retired in the past 1,000 years and hid away his edge, keeping an extremely low profile. They all believed that he would pour his efforts towards this world's interest if he represented them. After all, the amount of land the world of Forsaken Saints required could only be settled through negotiations. Houston nodded gently. At that moment, his dark and turbid eyes brightened. There seemed to be a flash of sharp light, and he said to Xiongzhong, "If it weren't for the crisis of the world, we would have gone to a battle to the death, seeing how your world wants to take our land. It would be very difficult to say who would be the final victor. After all, your Spirit King is no longer invincible." Xiongzhong and the elders and protectors frowned when they heard his words. They became slightly displeased, but they were unable to rebuke Houston for the time being as he was speaking the truth. The reason why we are all seated here today is due to the major contributions tens of thousands of your people have made to help avert the crisis of the world. Their sacrifice has earned our admiration, which is also why the 4 races of our world are willing to give some territory to your world. However, it won't be much, so please prepare yourselves, said Houston. This is a map that we've prepared. We've marked the land that we want on there, so please have a look. If you have no objections, we can reach an agreement as soon as possible, Xiongzhong said nonchalantly before taking out several plans he had prepared beforehand. He controlled these plans, floating them gently before the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races. When the Origin Realm experts unfurled the plans, they all frowned aside from Tai Ta, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the 4 brothers. Xiongzhong had actually requested for half of the territory that each race possessed. What a coincidence. We just happen to have prepared plans as well, which has the land that we are willing to gift your world marked on it. Please have a look as well, said Houston before passing a plan to Xiongzhong. They had prepared many versions of the plan, and each version was only created after reaching an agreement with all the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races. The land divided on the plan was different in each version as well. Chapter 1637, Hopes of reaching the 9th layer. Xiongzhong accepted the plan and unfurled it slowly. The plan was inscribed on the hide of a high-class magical beast, clearly depicting all the geographical features. This included all the land that the 4 races inhabited. As expected, there were a few red circles in a few places on the map, and every circle would take up a tiny part of the 4 races' land. Xiongzhong immediately frowned when he saw the tiny red circles. His expression became rather ugly. Then he passed it to the elders and protectors around him for them to have a look as well. Without any exceptions, all of the people who saw the plan frowned in displeasure. The contribution of our world to averting the crisis is only second to your sovereign, Jian Chen. It's even enough to rival his contributions. After all, if it were not for the tens of thousands of sacrifices from our people, you would have nothing and end up all dead even with Jian Chen's presence. We saved your world and the countless lives of your world. With such contributions, you're not even willing to give us a little land? Aren't you going overboard? Xiongzhong said gruffly. He understood inside that the Tian Yuan continent no longer feared their world of forsaken saints. Under such circumstances, the only method to gain some territory besides war was negotiations. They only needed to hold negotiations once. After they consented, it would be very difficult to change the agreement. As a result, Xiongzhong and all the elders and protectors stationed in this world had made up their minds about this negotiation. They needed to push for as many benefits as they could for their own world given that they maintained peace, as this would have a significant effect on their world's future. Houston coughed gently in response to Xiongzhong. He said, "Indeed, your world has made major contributions to averting the crisis, but there's one thing that you're wrong about. The crisis of the world doesn't only affect our world but your world of forsaken saints as well. Our world functioned as the front line, so once our world gave way, your world could not escape either. Our 2 worlds basically shared the same fate. If one survived, so did the other, but if one fell, so would the other. As a result, I hope you don't think that you're heroes that saved our world because you were saving your own world as well," Houston said steadily. The protectors and elders all became rather ugly when they heard his words. Houston's explanation seemed to have stripped them of all their achievements against the crisis of the world. Before the people from the foreign world could say anything in response, Houston continued, "In reality, it doesn't matter what kind of contribution your world has towards eliminating the crisis of the world. There's no need at all for us to give you any of our land because Jian Chen was the leading figure in stopping the crisis. If it were not for his treasure, you wouldn't have been able to avoid the fate of being devoured even with your slightly special bloodline. The reason why we agreed to give you some land was just to complete the final wishes of the people who laid down their lives so that they can rest easy in the afterlife." The 2 sides argued intensely over the matter of land. Both of them stated their reasons and no one gave in. Fortunately, both sides felt some fear for each other, which was why everyone purposefully controlled themselves despite the intense discussion. They did not end up fighting. The Tian Yuan continent side feared the number of origin realm experts the foreign world possessed, as well as Xiongzhong who had reached reciprocity. The protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints feared Shengguan Mu'er. Although she was not present and Three Saint Island was extremely far away from Flame City, her strength had reached the point that traversing such a distance would only take a single step. Very soon, the first day of negotiations came to a close. Neither side made any progress. The side of the Tian Yuan content wanted to cling on to whatever territory they could, refusing to budge even if it was just slightly more than what they had initially proposed. Meanwhile, the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints wanted enough land that would make them satisfied at the very least, so the two sides were obviously unable to come to an agreement. The Arctic tundra in the north did not belong to the Tian Yuan continent, and it was distant from Three Saint Island. A golden divine hall currently stood there silently, and all the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints had gathered in there. This world is going too far. We've made such great contributions to stopping the crisis, yet they've described it as nothing. Even for territory, they're only willing to let up that tiny portion. It's far from enough considering how large our population is, a protector said furiously. Everyone in the hall fell silent. Their expressions were all very ugly. After the negotiations from the first day, they all understood the Tian Yuan continent's attitude towards the matter. It would clearly be difficult for them to obtain a substantial amount of land. It's a pity that the Spirit King isn't here, which was why we were so hesitant during the negotiations and afraid of offending this world by going too far. Even if we ignore Shengguan Mu'er who is spying on us secretly, there's the even more terrifying Jian Chen above our heads. He's no weaker than the Spirit King, so if he just happens to break through, an elder said grimly. His face became rather pale as he reached the end of those words. Xiongzhong sighed gently, that's true. Jian Chen is in secluded cultivation, but who knows when he'll emerge. If he does actually break through and decides to turn on us, none of us will be able to make it back to our world alive. Let's postpone the negotiations for now and wait until the Spirit King returns. The origin realm experts of the four races remained in Flame City. After the first day of negotiations, they gathered together once again, except for Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, and the four brothers, who did not care about the matter regarding land at all. They left as soon as the negotiations had concluded. The world of forsaken saints has quite the appetite. The land they want is just too much. How can we let up so much land so easily? After all, they're not a part of our world, Gui Haidao said gruffly. The negotiations regarding territory cannot be concluded in just a day or two. In my opinion, we should let the matter be for now. Once Jian Chen emerges from seclusion, let's ask for his opinion. After all, if it were not for the fact that Jian Chen has the strength to keep the Spirit King at bay, we would not even have the right to negotiate, said the sea goddess. All right, let's postpone the matter for now. We'll wait for my great-grandson to emerge. After all, he has the most authority among all of us, Yang Lai chuckled. Whenever his great-grandson was mentioned, he would be unable to contain his pride. Yang Lai, you're acting like we don't know that Jian Chen is your descendant. Don't get too cocky, Gui Haidao cursed jokingly. He too envied Yang Lai as he had such an impressive descendant. A huge blood-red cloud remained in outer space without moving at all. Jian Chen sat with his legs crossed inside as the essence of the cloud's power gathered from all directions, permeating Jian Chen's surroundings in the form of a red mist that was even darker in color. It entered his body through his pores and breath. After entering Jian Chen's body, the red mist was rapidly converted into chaotic force. Jian Chen was clearly much faster at refining the power than before. Jian Chen's chaotic Niden was no longer as small as when he had just broken through to the 8th layer. As he rapidly absorbed the cloud's power, it grew slowly. Even though its growth was extremely gradual, any progress he made meant that he was even closer to reaching the 9th layer of the chaotic body. There might be hopes of me reaching the 9th layer of the chaotic body here. When I broke through to the 8th layer, my cultivation directly went from receival to early reciprocity, completely skipping past returnance. If my chaotic body reaches the 9th layer, I wonder what my cultivation will reach. Will it be peak reciprocity or will I directly reach godhood? Jian Chen thought as he was filled with anticipation. The 8th layer of the chaotic body bestowed the battle prowess of godhood on him, but that was only battle prowess. His personal level of cultivation remained at early reciprocity. However, if his cultivation level also progressed to godhood, just what level would his battle prowess reach? Whatever. I'll let the matter of territory negotiations between the two worlds be for now. I'll devote myself to increasing my strength here. Once I absorb all the essence of the cloud, or when my chaotic body reaches the 9th layer, I'll emerge from seclusion. The two sides currently fear each other anyway, and with Shangguan Mu'er watching over them, there's no need for me to worry, Jian Chen thought. Although he was cultivating here, he still paid attention to the Tianyuan continent at all times. He only needed to expand his soul, and he would envelop the entire planet. He was extremely clear of what had happened during the negotiations. His soul had even extended into the Golden Divine Hall on the Arctic tundra, and he had clearly heard the words of Xiongzhong and the others. Chapter 1638. The Spirit King arrives. The negotiations between the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints would be held every 10 to 15 days. However, since they never reached an agreement, they would always end up leaving with a bad taste in their mouths. As the place where the two worlds held the negotiations, Flame City's fame boomed once more, skyrocketing to a point where not only did everyone on the Tianyuan continent know about it, its name had even spread across the vast expanse of the world of Forsaken Saints. The Origin Realm experts that belonged on the side of the Tianyuan continent had chosen Flame City because they feared the Origin Realm experts of the other world. They planned on using the prestige of the city to deter the Origin Realm experts from laying their hands on them during the negotiations. After all, even damaging a tiny portion of the city would be akin to directly offending Jian Chen. At the same time, this precaution indirectly elevated the position of the Flame City. By now, there was no organization across the world that could rival its prestige, even though it was nowhere as expansive as the 7 capital cities of the continent. The current Flame City had reached the level of the Sacred Spirit Hall in the world of Forsaken Saints. It had reached a point where it could no longer be replaced. The Heavenly Enchantress sat on a large gray rock on the top of 3 Saint Island, exuding an otherworldly beauty. A simple zither was placed before her. As her slender fingers slowly swept across the strings, she played an enchanting music. The music seemed to have fused with nature, carrying a certain airiness. It could calm people and make them be at ease. The music rang through 3 Saint Island, causing all the fishermen who lived on the island to seem enchanted. Large fish had even begun to float to the surface of the ocean as if the music enchanted them as well. A handsome young man sat next to the Heavenly Enchantress. The music did not affect him at all. He cast his gaze out towards the horizon, towards the distant Tianyuan continent. At the same time, he would look at the sky often. The young man could vaguely see a small red cloud at the edge of the blue sky. The red speck was only visible to those who possessed extraordinary visual senses. The music stopped after a while and Shangguan Mu'er put the zither away. She gazed into outer space with her enchanting eyes and murmured, "The evil power has weakened slightly. Your father should be absorbing the power in there, but by the looks of things, he'll need quite some time before he fully absorbs it all." The handsome young man looked at the Heavenly Enchantress when he heard her words and said with some worry, "Mother, the power is so great and evil. Will father harm himself by absorbing it?" Shangguan Mu'er fell silent in thought for a while before responding, "Your father's cultivation method is as special as yours, so you can't treat it like anything else. At the same time, he always knows what he's doing, so if he's daring enough to absorb it, he'll definitely have full confidence." "I don't have to worry then," the young man immediately became relieved. As expected, he was Shangguan Aojin. After a moment of silence, Shangguan Aojin said, "Mother, the Tianyuan continent is currently negotiating with the world of Forsaken Saints. The difference between the Origin Realm experts of our world and theirs is very great, so we might show weakness during the negotiations. This is the exact time when they need you, mother, so why don't you go to the Tian Yuan continent to watch over matters? Shangguan Aojian hoped his mother could go to the Tian Yuan continent very much as he had grown attached to the continent during his journeys there. He obviously did not wish for the Tian Yuan continent to suffer too much during the negotiations. At the same time, the Tian Yuan continent was his father's homeland. Shangguan Mu'er looked at Shangguan Aojian, and her eyes warmed up. She said, Xiao Bao, I understand that you worry for the Tian Yuan continent, but there's really no need. Even if you ignore the fact that our side hasn't shown any weakness at all, it's impossible for the negotiations to conclude so soon. No matter what they end up negotiating, the decision will be personally made by the Spirit King and your father in the end. If your father refuses to agree, it doesn't matter how much advantage the world of Forsaken Saints manages to gain through the negotiations. Do you understand? I see. It's because we have no need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints at all with our current strength. Like an arrow, time passed by in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the two worlds had already been negotiating for 10 years. The two sides still failed to reach an agreement after this decade. They both understood already that it would be very difficult for them to reach an agreement just by themselves. In the end, the decision would still be made by the most powerful people of the respective worlds. As a result, the negotiations towards the end were just a symbolic push and pull to drag out time as they waited for the Spirit King and Jian Chen to emerge from seclusion. During the 10 years, the news that the humans, 100 races, sea race, and magical beasts had to give up a portion of their land had already spread far and wide. It had led to quite a large disturbance. Some people did not care too much about it at all, but there were also others who insisted on keeping their territory, refusing to leave even if they were to die. After having been split into 4 sections during the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints, the continent was divided into 4 regions: north, south, east, and west. An extremely wide river separated the regions. The rivers crossed the entire continent like a cross, directly flowing into the ocean. The location where the 4 rivers intersected was where the ruins of Mercenary City once lay. Water had now filled in the area. However, there was an extremely unusual region there as well. A strange energy protected the region, keeping the surrounding river out. This special region was the tunnel that connected the Tian Yuan continent to the world of Forsaken Saints. The tunnel was peaceful. After many years, the tunnel had stabilized long ago. Although powerful streams of energy would burst out from the tunnel from time to time, it was no longer like the time when it was first formed, where energy constantly gushed out wildly into outer space. At this moment, the stabilized tunnel pulsed slightly. The ripples rapidly expanded before leading to a huge reaction from the entire tunnel. The whole tunnel trembled violently and streams of extremely unstable energy wreaked havoc inside. Very soon, a figure gradually appeared in the streams of energy. The figure was very blurry at the start, but it gradually grew clearer as it came closer to the exit. The figure was a man who approached his 40s. His black hair was elegant, and he carried a dark metal sword on his back. His appearance was extremely ordinary, and he was simply dressed. He radiated with plainness. Even though he seemed extremely plain, he possessed an aura of dominance. He strode through the tunnel, and with his advance, the entire tunnel trembled. Streams of violent energy would be created constantly, rampaging through the tunnel. However, when the streams approached the man, they would disperse silently even though they were enough to heavily injure Saint Emperors. As a result, there were no streams of energy within a meter range of the man. The man did not purposefully cause the changes in the tunnel. He was just too powerful, so when he traveled through the tunnel, he seemed to be approaching the absolute limit that the tunnel could endure. This was why the tunnel had reacted in such a way. Even when he concealed his origin energy and presence, he could not avoid this. The man did not walk at a fast pace, but he would travel a great distance with each step. In just a short while, he emerged from the tunnel and appeared beneath the sky of the Tian Yuan continent. Suddenly, the wind and clouds began to churn. The thick layer of white clouds in the sky dispersed silently as if a terrifying pressure had forcefully crushed them. At the same time, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, engulfing the world in a split second. It shocked everyone in the world, and all the beasts in the world collapsed onto the ground. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts in the Golden Divine Hall on the Arctic tundra changed. Soon afterwards, they beamed with joy. The Spirit King, it's the Spirit King's presence. The Spirit King has emerged. Quick, let's go welcome the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints collectively cried out in joy. They charged out of the Divine Hall as quickly as they could and hurried off towards the tunnel. All of them felt extremely indignant in the years they spent in this world. They had to negotiate with the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent's world. These Origin Realm experts were clearly nothing in their eyes in terms of strength, weak enough to be crushed easily, yet they just had to hold themselves back even during the negotiation, resulting in no progress even after 10 years. This was all because the Tian Yuan continent had Shangguan Mu'er and Jian Chen, who was in outer space. Their Spirit King was not present either, which was why they were so hesitant during the negotiations. Now that the Spirit King had emerged from seclusion and come over, they all became filled with confidence. They were obviously overjoyed to have someone to rely on. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races snapped open their eyes simultaneously in Flame City. They looked towards the tunnel's location, and they all became extremely grim. Shangguan Mu'er's eyes narrowed as well. She looked in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent, and she became slightly stern as well. The Spirit King has finally come. Jian Chen, when are you going to emerge? Shangguan Mu'er looked at outer space. There was worry on her beautiful face. The Spirit King was so powerful that he was far beyond what she could handle. The world only had Jian Chen who could handle him. Chapter 1639, 10 years, we welcome the Spirit King. With Xiongzhong in the lead, all the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints hurried to the tunnel between the 2 worlds as quickly as possible. They bowed towards the Spirit King politely. They had arrived rather quickly. Less than 5 seconds after the Spirit King had emerged from the tunnel, they had arrived from tens of millions of kilometers away. The Spirit King was indifferent. He glanced around before looking towards the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce space, stabbing through the atmosphere as a sharp sword to look at the blood-red cloud that hovered in outer space silently. He frowned slightly. Jian Chen, you still haven't emerged, the Spirit King murmured. His voice was rather deep. Then he looked towards Xiongzhong and asked emotionlessly, Xiongzhong, how have the 10 years of negotiations gone? Xiongzhong became bitter. Spirit King, the people of this world continuously insisted on giving us a tiny part of their land, nowhere near the amount that we need. Coupled with the fact that Jian Chen's right over our heads and Shangguan Mu'er's on 3 Saint Island, we've been fearful in the negotiations without your support. It was impossible for us to make a big deal against the people of this world, so we've made no actual progress in the past decade. If that's the case, let me go talk with the people of this world, the Spirit King said emotionlessly and slightly coldly. At this moment, the nearby space trembled slightly. All the Origin Realm experts of this world appeared at the same time. They faced the Spirit King very sternly. They all clasped their hands towards him after appearing. They had no choice but to come. At the very least, the region was desolate. It was better than the Spirit King personally visiting Flame City. You've come at the perfect time. The negotiations that haven't progressed for 10 years can end today. Xiongzhong, show them the plans you've drawn up, said the Spirit King. Yes, Spirit King, Xiongzhong replied courteously before tossing a paper scroll towards the Origin Realm experts from this world. You big baddie, Xiaoling stared at the Spirit King viciously as she murmured to herself. Even though the Spirit King had once fought alongside the people of this world to avert the crisis of the world, Xiaoling still could not forget about the great demonic figure he had projected onto the barrier when he attacked the seal beneath Mercenary City. That sight had left her quite terrified back then. Xiongzhong's paper plan hovered quietly before the Origin Realm experts. They all revealed ugly expressions, and none of them reached for the scroll. Spirit King, there's no need to be so urgent with this matter. Why don't we discuss it after Jianchen returns? At this moment, a beautiful voice rang out. Shangguan Mu'er had hurried over from Three Saint Island as well. She carried her simple zither as she stood in the air sternly. I would naturally discuss with Jianchen if he was present. Since he's in seclusion, the matter of territory can be decided by you people. It's the same for me to be discussing with you, said the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts that belonged to the four races showed rather ugly expressions. They did not possess the power to discuss anything with the Spirit King, let alone protect their own interests. The strong preying on the weak was the law of survival. If the Spirit King planned on going to war against them and acted mercilessly, the Spirit King could personally kill them if they displeased him during the negotiations. After all, the only person who could stand on level ground with the Spirit King was not present. If the Spirit King really wished to lay his hands on them, there would only be death. Even Shangguan Mu'er would not be able to avoid that fate. Just as the Origin Realm experts that belonged to the four races had no idea what to do, a voice suddenly rang out from outer space. Shenjian, why don't you wait for me to emerge from seclusion before settling the matter of territory? Your world has been in the same situation for countless years, so is there really a need to hurry? Jianchen. It's Jianchen. This is Jianchen's voice. Jianchen has finally spoken. He still cares about the Tianyuan continent. As Jianchen's voice rang out, all the Origin Realm experts from the four races beamed with joy. They became relieved as well. Unknowingly, Jianchen seemed to have become the person they depended on for support, as well as the source of their confidence. Jianchen had even become the person they relied on in the face of the Spirit King. The Spirit King looked towards outer space, and his eyes shone. He said emotionlessly, Jianchen, if you remain in seclusion for 1,000 years, do we have to wait that long as well? Have you gone into seclusion now so that you can have greater bargaining chips in future negotiations? It won't be as long as 1,000 years. I'll emerge in a decade at most. Shenjian, I understand you, and you understand me as well. No matter how powerful I become, it won't affect the outcome of the negotiations. It's all because of your people that we were able to stop the crisis of the world this time. Their courageous sacrifice has earned my admiration, and I will assist them in completing their final wishes so that they can rest easy. This is my oath to you, as well as the oath to all your people who had laid down their lives bravely. A gleam of light flickered through the Spirit King's eyes. He said, considering that we know each other, I'll wait for another decade. I will come again after that time. With that, the Spirit King returned to the world of Forsaken Saints with his Origin Realm experts. When he mentioned that they knew each other, no one present understood the implications. Its meaning was so deep that only he and Jianchen could understand. The Origin Realm experts from the four races all let out a deep breath of relief when they saw the Spirit King lead his people back to the world of Forsaken Saints. They had completely calmed down. They felt like they were about to suffocate when they faced the Spirit King earlier. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had already passed since Jianchen and the Spirit King's 10-year agreement. It had been 18 years since Jianchen had entered seclusion. 18 years was quite a long time for ordinary people. It was enough for an infant to grow up into an adult, but to sainthood and Origin Realm experts with lengthy lives, 18 years was only a brief period of cultivation. Even though the blood-red cloud in outer space was still present, it had shrunken at an extremely rapid rate. It was less than a tenth of its previous size. The pulses of power from the cloud was extremely weak now. Jianchen cultivated within the cloud. His chaotic Niden had reached its limit after 18 years of absorbing the terrifying power of the cloud. He had reached the limits of the 8th layer of the chaotic body. At this moment, Jianchen's body jerked suddenly. As he refined the last strand of pure power from the cloud, his chaotic Niden finally surpassed its limits and shattered loudly. Chapter 1640. The ninth layer of the chaotic body. Jian Chen suffered the pain of refining his body once again. It was the same experience, the same agony. This was the ninth time he had undergone this. From the 8 times before, he had accumulated plenty of experience already, so it was all smooth sailing for Jian Chen this time. It was as easy as cake for him. As Jian Chen's chaotic force gradually strengthened, he emitted a tremendous presence. It caused the entire blood-red cloud to churn wildly. At the same time, the presence expanded beyond the cloud, permeating the surrounding space. It squashed on the surrounding space, causing it to distort while the stars glimmered. The space a few dozen meters away from Jian Chen had even cracked. Jian Chen's presence caused all these cracks. His presence was so tremendous that it had surpassed early reciprocity long ago. It had surpassed mid-reciprocity, and even the presence of a late reciprocity expert would struggle to rival with it. It had surpassed the limits of the world long ago, yet his presence continued to climb. The disturbance Jian Chen caused in outer space obviously could not escape the senses of the origin realm experts on the Tianyuan continent. At that moment, all of them raised their heads at the same time and looked towards outer space, towards the location of the blood-red cloud. What a terrifying presence. Has Jian Chen broken through again after 18 years of seclusion? Tai Ta sighed in amazement as he cultivated in the War God Hall. With a flash, he disappeared from within the divine hall. Gui Haidao, Yang Lai, and Feng Xiaotian had gathered together on the Tianyuan continent. Gui Haidao stared at outer space with mixed feelings and said, Jian Chen's strength was already extremely great, enough to fight the Spirit King who was akin to godhood. Now that he has actually broken through again, I really do wonder what shocking level his strength will reach. What terrifying talent, Feng Xiaotian murmured. He too smiled. He has actually broken through again. My great-grandson sure is outstanding. I just hope that he won't suffer any backlashes from increasing his strength so quickly in the past few years, making his foundation unstable. Yang Lai chuckled aloud. He was filled with pride, but at the same time, there was some worry. Jian Chen's strength had increased just too quickly. Even Yang Lai, someone who had lived for countless years and had seen many things, found it rather difficult to accept it. Great. Big Brother has become stronger again. Big Brother doesn't have to be scared of that baddie at all now. That baddie is no longer Big Brother's opponent. Xiaoling clapped her hands and jumped around as she called out loudly. She was extremely excited. At the same time, Xiao Jin and Xiaoling smiled happily in Flame City. All the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races appeared 100 meters away from the blood-red cloud. Now that the agreed 10 years were coming to a close, Jian Chen's breakthrough held a whole different level of significance for the negotiations. All the Origin Realm experts hovered in the distance and did not approach the blood-red cloud. They quietly waited for Jian Chen to emerge. They knew that Jian Chen would emerge soon. A few days later, Jian Chen's presence slowly subsided within the blood-red cloud. He gradually returned to peace and the fist-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian had returned to the size of a soybean. It had shrunken, but it clearly contained a chaotic force on a whole different level compared to the 8th layer. Jian Chen smiled. Originally, he believed that reaching the 8th layer of the chaotic body was the limit for him in this world, but he had never expected the evil spirit to leave behind such a great fortune to him after the crisis of the world was averted, allowing his chaotic body to progress to the 9th layer. This was quite the pleasant surprise. However, Jian Chen's face changed at that moment. In the next moment, a presence filled with brutality suddenly began to radiate from him. This presence was also filled with destruction and evilness. His eyes had turned red at that moment and even his hair rapidly reddened, causing Jian Chen to become filled with evilness. He seemed like a fiend. Jian Chen felt his consciousness become blurry. There was only an endless desire for slaughter and destruction left in his heart. Now, he seemed to have become an existence that only knew slaughter and destruction, no longer fearing anything. He would kill anything that got in his way, without any feelings or reluctance. Crack. With an inaudible sound, Jian Chen's soybean seed-sized chaotic Niden suddenly cracked open. An intense pain accompanied the crack. The pain made Jian Chen quiver, jerking him back to consciousness. The redness in his eyes gradually faded away, and his hair that had almost reddened completely turned back to its original black color as well. Even though Jian Chen's transformation had lasted for less than a split second, all the Origin Realm experts who were waiting outside still managed to sense his corrupt presence. What is this presence? Does the core of the crisis still remain? The sea goddess said sternly. All the people gathered there became extremely grim. Did something go wrong during Jian Chen's cultivation? Feng Xiaotian said gruffly. Everyone's face changed when they heard him. Even though they were suspicious, none of them dared to enter the blood-red cloud to check. They were not as powerful as Jian Chen or the Spirit King, so even though the cloud had weakened now, it still posed a certain degree of threat towards them. Most importantly, Jian Chen was still in there. They were afraid that they would affect Jian Chen if they just barged in. Jian Chen became grim in the blood-red cloud. He had also sensed the changes earlier. Coupled with the crack that had appeared on his chaotic Niden, all of these factors pointed to the fact that something had gone wrong after he broke through to the 9th layer. Jian Chen looked at the blood-red cloud and said grimly, "Looks like absorbing the power of the crisis isn't that easy. After all, the crisis of the world is a special existence that even the laws of the world can do nothing about. Even if I cultivate the chaotic body, it'll still bring me trouble because the crisis of the world is more powerful than the current me. There shouldn't have been any problems if I was far more powerful the crisis. I would have been able to refine it easily. But I need to understand just what hidden problems it might cause right now, and I need to come up with ways of handling them." Jian Chen immediately checked through his body. Although his chaotic Niden had cracked open, he did not pay too much attention to it. The chaotic Niden's imperfection would affect the strength he could display, limiting him to only 80% of his power, but even just the 80% was greater than what he possessed with the 8th layer of the chaotic body. When he truly cared about were the changes to his consciousness earlier. That was what he feared. Once he lost control of himself and sank into a state that only knew destruction and slaughter, the outcome would be unthinkable. After all, there was no longer anyone in the world who could stop him. Chapter 1641, Hidden Problems. Jian Chen carefully checked through his body several times and missed no corner. In the end, he finally discovered something different with his soul. A red speck of light had appeared in his soul. The blood-red light was very dim, but it had already silently fused into his soul, making it impossible for him to remove it. It would have been exceedingly difficult for him to discover it if he did not look closely. Jian Chen did not feel any sense of threat from the red light. It had fused with his soul silently, without raising his attention at all. It did not bring him any discomfort either. "Looks like you're the troublemaker." A cold light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes, and his face became extremely sunken. When he recalled all the moments of his 18 years of secluded cultivation, he understood very soon that he did not completely refine the evil presence within the blood's power. Although the power turned into chaotic force in the end, the evil presence that he had not completely refined entered his soul silently. "This speck of light red filled with negative emotions shouldn't have been enough for my chaotic Niden to crack, even though it can influence my mind at certain times. Looks like there are some other flaws in my chaotic Niden. In the end, it's all because my strength is too weak. If my chaotic body was at the 9th layer or even the 10th layer when I refined the cloud, I probably wouldn't have come across these problems," Jian Chen thought. A smear of determination appeared in his eyes, and with a thought, the 2 broken strands of primordial god silk appeared from his wrist. "I need to deal with the hidden problems in my soul immediately, or there'll be unthinkable consequences if my consciousness becomes affected in the future. The red light in my soul originated from the power of the crisis, so the power of the primordial god silk would be the most effective in destroying it," thought Jian Chen. With a thought, the 2 broken strands turned into a golden streak of light and disappeared into his forehead, entering his sea of consciousness. He had not refined the primordial god silk in the past, which was why Jian Chen could only store it in his space ring for so long. However, now that he had refined the primordial god silk while it was fending off the crisis of the world, not only could he hide the primordial god silk in his body now, he could even send it into his sea of consciousness easily. Although the primordial god silk had basically run out of power, there was still a tiny sliver of it left. This time, Jian Chen used the last sliver without any hesitation at all in an attempt to destroy the red speck of light that had infiltrated his soul. Fortunately, the primordial god silk was completely under his control now, and its power had no offensive capabilities unless it was facing the crisis of the world. As a result, Jian Chen did not worry at all that its power would harm his soul. But very soon, Jian Chen's heart sank even more. He discovered that the primordial god silk completely failed to remove the speck of red light in his soul. It did not seem to pose any harm to it at all. Damn. This speck of red light comes from the power the crisis used, but during my refinement process, it has changed. This change has allowed it to become immune to the primordial god silk. The primordial god silk no longer poses any threat to it now. Jian Chen's face became extremely sunken. His happiness and joy from breaking through to the 9th layer had completely vanished. He just could not imagine what would happen if he lost himself and began to massacre on the Tian Yuan continent. Jian Chen could not help but shiver, frightened to the point where he became covered in cold sweat. This time, he felt chills run down his spine as his entire soul tremored in fright. At the same time, the familiar faces of Shangguan Mu'er, Shangguan Aojian, Yu Yu, Huang Wan, Changyang Ba, Bai Yuntian, Chang Wuji, De Gufeng, Qin Shao, and so on all flashed through his head, causing him to become even paler. Not only were his wives and son on the Tian Yuan continent, but there were also his parents and many friends who had gone through thick and thin with him. Jian Chen did not leave the blood-red cloud. In the blink of an eye, he had stayed there for 3 days. He had come up with many ideas and tried them all during those 3 days, but he was still unable to do anything to the speck of red light in his soul because it had already fused with his soul. It had become a part of him, making it extremely difficult for him to remove it. Having run out of options, Jian Chen could only awaken the sword spirits who had been slumbering for 18 years. Master, if we recover, we can remove the hidden problem in your soul without any difficulty, but there's nothing we can do either right now, Ziying said helplessly. Master, there's no need to be so heavy-hearted. As long as you don't experience stimulation that is too great and manage to keep your consciousness clear, there's no need to worry so much about the light affecting your mind. And before you find a way to deal with the problem of your soul, Ziying and I can take turns watching over Master. Once Master's mind shows signs of being affected, we can awaken Master in time, said Qing Suo. As Jian Chen's strength progressed, Ziying and Qing Suo, who had not recovered their strength, could only provide minimal assistance to him. As a result, the sword spirits had fallen silent after destroying the crisis of the world, akin to going into seclusion to recover their strength. Jian Chen sighed gently, that's all we can do for now. Looks like I can only find a way to deal with the problems of my soul after I go to the saint's world. I'll need to do that as well if I want my chaotic body to progress to higher layers. As for the chaotic Niden, it's the source of my power, so it's not as fragile as my soul. Fixing it shouldn't be difficult. It'll just require a large amount of energy. Even if there's something that hasn't been refined in my chaotic Niden, it'll be slowly destroyed as my chaotic force progresses. It'll only affect the strength that I can assert. Jian Chen emerged from the blood-red cloud that he had remained in for 18 years. When he saw the glimmering stars, he had completely calmed down as if nothing bothered him anymore. Big brother, you've finally emerged. Xiaoling cried out excitedly when Jian Chen appeared before all the Origin Realm experts. She directly lunged into his bosom. Jian Chen held Xiaoling by the shoulders gently with a smile. Affection poured from his eyes without any restraint. Even though Xiaoling had lived for over 1,000,000 years, he still treated her as his own younger sister. When he was still weak, Xiaoling had assisted him in overcoming problems many times, saving his life. Now that his strength had reached the apex of the world, it was up to him to protect Shaoling. Jianchen, have you broken through again? And what was that extremely brutal presence that we suddenly felt 3 days ago? The sea goddess asked in concern. She immediately became stern towards the end. Shangguan Mu'er, Yang Lai, Gui Hai Dao, Feng Xiaotian, Tai Ta, the 4 brothers, and so on all looked at Jianchen with interest. Jianchen was the pillar of support for their world. He was the only person who could rival the Spirit King in power. Whether his strength had increased again weighed on their minds because the stronger Jianchen was, the more confidence they would have when facing the world of forsaken saints. However, if Jianchen's strength had somehow declined and was no longer as great as the Spirit King, they would suffer from an extreme disadvantage in the upcoming negotiations. If the 2 worlds began fighting once again, it would be extremely likely that they would suffer defeat. Thank you for your concern. After 18 years of cultivation, my strength has indeed progressed to a new level. The Spirit King should no longer be my opponent with my current strength, unless he has truly reached godhood with his cultivation, Jianchen said indifferently. Although his chaotic Niden had cracked, limiting him to only 80% of his full strength, it was still greater than what he could display with the 8th layer of the chaotic body. Most importantly, reaching the 9th layer did not just mean his chaotic force had strengthened. His chaotic body had become greater as well. Jianchen estimated that the 9th layer of the chaotic body had exceeded late reciprocity and reached godhood. A chaotic body at godhood was simply unbelievable. That would mean nothing below godhood could even injure him, even if he just stood there. Although the Spirit King's battle prowess had reached godhood and could harm him, it would only give him some light scratches. Everyone became settled when they heard Jianchen's words. They smiled at ease. Jianchen looked at Shangguan Mu'er and took a step out, arriving before her. Looking at her beautiful face, Jianchen said with self-blame, "Has Aojian been well in these years?" Shangguan Mu'er looked at Jianchen, and her gaze wavered. She said calmly, "Aojian has been very well. He just misses you. When are you going to see him?" With that, Shangguan Mu'er turned around and left, returning to 3 Saint Island. The sea goddess, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gui Hai Dao all glanced past Jianchen and Shangguan Mu'er. They seemed to smile. Although Shangguan Aojian's true identity had never been publicly announced, they had already discovered the truth through some traces. The sea goddess was the first one to find out. Shaoling arrived beside Jianchen and asked in interest, "Brother, who is Aojian? Is it the young island master from 3 Saint Island? He has so many violet cloud peaches. Did you give them all to him?" "You're so unfair, big brother," Shaoling pouted unhappily. Chapter 1642, Changes. The Changyang clan in Lore City had already become the most famous clan in the world long ago. Even the people on the Beast God continent, Sea Realm, and Wasteland continent knew about it. Even many people from the world of Forsaken Saints had heard about it. This was all because the status of the Changyang clan in their world was akin to the Sacred Spirit Hall in the world of Forsaken Saints. It represented the greatest in the world, making it the center of attention because it was sovereign Jianchen's home. Even when the current clan was not particularly large, and its strength was not particularly great, it was a clan that would dominate in the world as long as Jianchen was present. There were even countless cultivators on the Tianyuan continent who would take pride in being a simple servant or guard for the clan because even a simple maid in the clan would possess extremely great status outside. There would rarely be anyone who would dare to offend them. With the Changyang clan's current prestige and strength, as well as Jianchen's support, expansion was a piece of cake. They would not face any obstructions at all, but since Jianchen had once made a request regarding this aspect, they had not expanded even with their extraordinary strength and influence. They remained within Lore City, dwelling on a piece of land that would be considered as tiny by many large clans and organizations. There was a symbolic structure in the clan. It seemed like a palace from the outside, well decorated and grand. Although its size could not be compared to those imperial palaces of empires or countries, its grandeur was far greater. There was a head-sized gem on the top of the palace that absorbed the light of the sun and the moon so that it could glow with a gentle but dazzling shine. The light would envelop the entire clan whether it was day or night. The palace was a holy structure in the eyes of everyone in the clan, as well as the most consecrated place in the entire clan. This was all because it was where Jian Chen stayed. Yang Lai, Bai Yuntian, and Changyang Ba had ordered its construction without Jian Chen's input. Only a place like that suited Jian Chen's current status in their eyes. A large number of golden armored guards stood around the palace solemnly. Uncontainable pride filled all their faces as if they were all proud to be guarding this place. However, the door to the residence was closed most of the time and would only be opened when it was time to clean the palace. No one was allowed to enter it under ordinary circumstances, and even the current patriarch, Changyang Ku, was not allowed to enter. At this moment, a young man silently stood within the tightly shut palace. He sighed emotionally as he looked around. There were 2 swords, one violet and one azure, on his back. As expected, he was the owner of the residence, Jian Chen. I haven't come back in so many years. I had never expected that even my home would become so unfamiliar. It's quite hard to see the familiar structures from before. Jian Chen sighed emotionally as he stood there. He could not help but reminisce the past at the sight of this unfamiliar home. His home was still his home, except the changes were so vast that the familiar landscape only existed in his memories now. However, Jian Chen did not care too much about the changes. He knew that it was all the plans of his parents, except he wished that he could see the familiar home from before. He wanted to see it again so that he would remember it better as his time here was running out. Today just happened to be a day when the residence was cleaned. Several dozen female servants in luxurious robes walked over. After the guards inspected them, they carefully pushed open the door and entered with much respect. Both the guards and the cleaners took extremely great pride in serving the Changyang clan. As a result, the female servants were dressed rather differently to regular female servants. Every single one of them wore the same uniform made from high-quality silk and satin. They were priceless. Ah! There's someone in here. The female servants, who were just about to start cleaning, suddenly called out. All their eyes widened as they stared at Jian Chen from 30 meters away. They had cleaned the residence for several years now, and some of the older servants had even cleaned this place for over a decade long. The residence had always been empty to them. No one else would ever enter it aside from during the cleaning process, and even the current patriarch of the clan did not possess the right to enter. They immediately became shocked and they suddenly found a person in the residence that was supposed to be empty. What? There's someone in there. The guards immediately heard their cries, and their expressions changed instantly. They had stood guard there the entire time. Aside from the female servants who had come to clean, they had not seen anyone else enter the divine hall. The guards immediately thought that someone had secretly snuck in when they heard that there was actually someone in the residence. Without any orders, they all began to radiate with powerful killing intent. They charged into the divine hall aggressively. This location was where their human sovereign resided, so apart from Jian Chen's wives and parents, no one had the right to set foot in there. Even if the current patriarch would suffer a punishment if he entered, so how could they afford to allow outsiders to blaspheme the place? Although they too were not allowed to enter the residence as guards, there were always exceptions. They had the power to enter the divine hall and arrest any intruders. The security within the Changyang clan was so tight that even flies could be caught. Many sainthood cultivators hid in the dark apart from the guards. They would pay attention to any movements in the Changyang clan at all times. The hidden cultivators immediately sensed the abnormal movements of the guards, so figures instantly flashed through the clan as several dozen of them were mobilized at the same time. They shot towards the residence as blurs. Some of them could even traverse several thousand meters with each step, appearing outside the residence as if they had teleported. In less than a second, several dozen sainthood experts had surrounded the residence. Most of them were saint rulers, with a few saint kings. There were 2 saint emperors among them as well, but without any exception, not a single one of them took a step into the residence. Chapter 1643. Brotherhood. More than a dozen sainthood experts had completely surrounded the residence long ago. Although they did not enter the residence, it would be almost impossible for the intruder in the residence to charge past them, even if they were a saint emperor. The guards for the residence surged into the structure like a flood as every single one of them radiated with killing intent. At the same time, 5 shocking presences appeared from the surroundings of the Changyang clan. In the previous moment, the 5 presences had only appeared, yet in the next, the people who possessed the presences had already appeared before the residence silently. The 5 of them were all saint emperors and were on a completely different level compared to the 2 saint emperors among the group of sainthood experts. The 5 saint emperors clearly possessed an extraordinary status in the Changyang clan. All the sainthood experts present clasped their hands politely when these 5 appeared. Even the 2 saint emperors who were a part of the crowd clasped their fists towards the 5 saint emperors. However, the 5 saint emperors completely ignored the actions, including the actions of the 2 other saint emperors. They were cold and expressionless, and their sharp gazes locked onto the residence. They were already secretly prepared to let out a lightning-swift attack at any time. In the eyes of all the people in the clan, the residence was a holy shrine that could not be blasphemed. This was even more so the case for the 5 of them. It had reached a point where, from a certain point of view, this place was even more important than their lives. This was because the 5 of them only possessed their current achievements due to the owner of the residence. It was the owner who had allowed them to go from mercenaries with limited potential to their current level of cultivation. The 5 of them were a part of the divine guards of the flame that Bai Lian had left at the Changyang clan. Jian Shen had poured his heart out to raise every single member of the divine guards of the flame. He had used a large number of heavenly resources to change their talent, allowing them to go from people with limited potential to geniuses, so their cultivation speed had increased drastically. Coupled with the fact that the crisis of the world had been averted and the Yinyang Saint Rock no longer existed, the laws of the world had gradually reached perfection and origin energy began to appear once again. All these factors made it much easier for cultivators to cultivate in general as well as easier to break through compared to before. The 5 members of the divine guards of the flame were obviously saint kings who had successfully broken through to saint emperor. The female servants huddled into a group in one corner as they secretly looked at Jian Chen's back fearfully. Every single one of them feel extremely curious, just who was so bold, daring to intrude on this residence. Even if 9th heavenly layer saint emperors intruded on this place, they would not be able to escape. There were no experts in the Changyang clan who could stop 9th heavenly layer saint emperors, but there were such experts in Flame City. If the Changyang clan truly required their assistance, the Origin Realm experts in Flame City could appear here at any time. This was because during Jian Chen's seclusion, the immature Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling would often go there to play. As time went on, basically everyone in the Changyang clan learnt the identity of the 2. Jian Chen remained where he was like a statue. He continued to reminisce the past, paying no attention to the surroundings. Very soon, the group of guards surrounded him. The captain of the guards arrived before Jian Chen and bellowed with a glare, "Sir, you." His voice came to a sudden stop. In the next moment, his face changed drastically. His eyes widened dramatically as disbelief and shock filled his face. Plop. The captain of the guards immediately dispersed his presence, and he became courteous. He directly dropped to his knees and buried his head deep into the ground. He said fearfully, "This one greets the 4th young master." This one did not know that the 4th young master has returned. "Please punish this one." The other guards all became stunned when they heard their captain's words, but they all kneeled at the same time soon afterwards. They said politely, "This one greets the 4th young master." "What 4th young master?" The frightened female servants in the corner all widened their eyes and stared at the unfamiliar figure. Their gazes were filled with disbelief. "4th young master," the voices of the guards echoed out and immediately caused the several dozen sainthood experts to become stunned. Many people found the moniker to be rather foreign. However, they all realized soon enough. All their faces changed in that moment, and the 5 people from the divine guards of the flame all became overjoyed. The 4th young master has returned. The person in the residence is actually 4th young master. Quick, quick, tell the old patriarch and the old madam. The 4th young master has returned. Immediately, a sainthood expert cried out. At that moment, his face had become flushed from his excitement. The 4th young master of the Changyang clan was the greatest sovereign from their world, no weaker than the Spirit King. Every single sainthood expert present felt glorious to be able to stand so close to him. Xiang'er, has Xiang'er returned? Before the message could be passed on, a vigorous voice rang out. An uncontainable excitement filled the voice. Changyang Ba and Bayun Tian hurried over from afar. Greeting to the old patriarch and the old madam. With their arrival, all the sainthood experts they passed by clasped their hands in greeting. They were very courteous, and even the saint emperors behaved in the same manner. If it was any other time, Changyang Ba and Bayun Tian definitely would have responded with a smile, except they could no longer bother with that at all now. They hurried into the residence joyfully and disappeared before everyone. Soon afterwards, the current patriarch, Changyang Ku, Jian Chen's 3 aunts, Ling Long, Yu Fengyan, Bai Yushuang, as well as the various members of the upper echelon hurried over from everywhere. They stopped outside the residence in the end and stared at it. Inside the residence, Bayun Tian wore a luxurious set of white robes as her face was filled with joy. She held on to Jian Chen and choked back her tears. Xiang'er, you're finally home. Changyang Ba chuckled. Xiang'er has become an origin realm sovereign now. Every time a sovereign goes into seclusion, it'll range from a few dozen years to several thousand years. It's already rather short for Xiang'er to emerge after 18 years. Jian Chen dismissed all the guards and the female servants as that was the only way to calm down the disturbance caused by an intruder trespassing on Jian Chen's residence. Jian Chen remained in the Changyang clan, accompanying his parents and elders as they conversed. Under Jian Chen's orders, his return was not announced, so only a portion of the people in the clan knew about his presence. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had already stayed in the Changyang clan for 3 days. During this time, Jian Chen did not take a single step away from the clan, remaining by his parents' side the entire time. He understood that the day he would leave this world was approaching. He wanted to spend some more time with his parents before he moved on, as he had no idea just how long it would be before he saw them again. Currently, in the garden of the clan, Jian Chen and Changyang Ku sat together in a pavilion. They drank together as they both reminisced the past. Back when we were still young, I often tried to bully you, but I never succeeded. Instead, I was the one who suffered and was made fun of. You often reduced me to a horrible shape. Changyang Ku smiled as he recalled the past. He cherished the memory. Jian Chen laughed aloud and raised his cup, downing all the alcohol inside. He said at ease, the part that gave me the greatest impression was when we were sparring. You originally wanted to bully me, yet you were injured instead. It was because of that matter that I third aunt punished me quite a lot. Changyang Ku chuckled when he heard that. My mother would have never thought that the person she punished before would become the greatest sovereign revered by all in this world. Pride appeared on Changyang Ku's face. After clinking cups with Jian Chen, he finished off his cup as well. Jian Chen smiled freely. His disagreements with Changyang Ku when he was young had instead become a lovely memory, firmly remembered by him. He cherished the memory. We were originally 4 siblings, yet there are only the 2 of us drinking here today. Big Brother has comprehended the state of great liberation and is cultivating in pure heart pavilion after severing his emotions and desires. I wonder if he still remembers our brotherhood. Sister has left this world as well, venturing to the distant saint's world. Even I don't know whether we'll meet in the future, and even if we do meet, I don't know if she'll be the same and still remember me. I actually wish very much that it's not just me and you drinking here right now, but that Big Brother and sister were here as well. Unfortunately, that has become just a wish now. Jian Chen became melancholy as he drank. Sister, Changyang-ku murmured softly and looked at the sky. A sliver of longing appeared in his eyes. Although Changyang-ku had severed his emotions and desires, he was still in this world after all. There was the chance of meeting him in the future, but his sister, Changyang-ku, might have bid a permanent farewell to him. It made his heart throb. Originally, they were 4 siblings, but now, there was only him and Jian-chen left. The female servants in the garden had already been dismissed, so only Jian-chen and Changyang-ku were in the large garden, drinking and conversing. Their laughter would ring out from time to time. They spoke a lot that day and also drank a lot. As they drank, night replaced day and day replaced night. Their voices never stopped in the garden. At this moment, Changyang-ku suddenly became serious with his flushed, tipsy face. He said, "Brother, many of the important figures in the clan have suggested to me that we should expand outwards while we have the prestige. After all, the difference between our territory and strength and prestige is just too great. What do you think? If you agree, I'll do it immediately." Jian Chen's eyes narrowed when he heard this. After a moment of silence, he gently shook his head. "Brother, the bigger the clan becomes, the more matters there are to deal with. That's not necessarily a good thing. Look at those kingdoms. Are there any of them where the princes don't turn on each other when the position of king opens up? Do you wish to see that, brother? Authority is temporary, so you can't get sucked into it. Only your personal strength determines everything. You should keep the Changyang clan as it is right now." Chapter 1644, A Terrifying Uncle. The 2 brothers drank until the morning before finally parting ways. The young master of the Changyang clan and his mother were currently in a luxurious courtyard. They were both slightly worried. At this moment, a female servant walked over quickly and said with a soft voice, "Madam, the patriarch has returned." Changyang-su's mother turned blank when she heard that. Then she immediately arrived before Changyang-su. She said to him excitedly, "Suer, since your father has returned, your uncle has probably returned to his residence as well. Quick, go find your uncle. Get him to properly train you. Your father and your uncle are brothers. He gave so many violet cloud peaches to that young island master of 3 Saint Island, yet he hasn't given you a single one for some reason. We're still family after all." "Yes, mother. I know what to do." "Humph, the young island master completely looks down on me just because he is stronger. He even wants me to call him elder brother. Does he think he is worthy? He just relied on the violet cloud peaches at all. If I consume one, my increase in strength will definitely be greater than his with my talent. At that time, just watch me smash out the young island master's teeth. Let's see how he plans on acting arrogant before me in the future," Changyang-su said coldly. He felt extremely displeased towards his uncle. His uncle had given so many violet cloud peaches to an outsider, yet he, the nephew, had not even received a single one. "So much for your grandfather as well. He just had to put the violet cloud peach he received from the young island master away safely, refusing to give it to you no matter what. If your grandfather gave you the violet cloud peach earlier, how would the young island master still be able to dominate you? Fortunately, not a lot of people know about this. Otherwise, if the fact that the young master of the Changyang clan was not as great as the young island master of 3 Saint Island made it out, we will all be ashamed. After all, our Changyang clan cannot be compared to 3 Saint Island," said Changyang-su's mother. She also felt much displeasure towards Changyang-ba's actions, but she dared not show this displeasure. She could only hide it deep in her heart. Jian-chen sat on his bed within his majestic residence. He was contemplating over the matter of territory between the 2 worlds. The land that the world of Forsaken Saints wants is indeed a little too much. If I follow through with what they want, it'll just be too great of a loss for the 4 races of this world. And if I do hand over this land, the original inhabitants will have to be relocated. Relocating is not an easy matter, Jian-chen thought to himself. "Fourth young master, the young master wishes to see you." At this moment, a guard's polite voice rang out from outside. "Let Su'er in," Jian Chen said calmly as he looked outside. Changyang Su walked in from outside and knelt before Jian Chen. He said politely, "Changyang Su greets uncle." Jian Chen examined Changyang Su and smiled amicably. He said, "There's no need to be so polite. You can stand." With that, Jian Chen raised his arm, and immediately, an invisible force lifted Changyang Su up gently. "Yes, uncle." Changyang Su was filled with politeness. Although he had said several times that he wanted to surpass his uncle in the future, he still could not help but become nervous in the face of his legendary uncle. After all, his uncle was just too famous. He was the greatest sovereign in the world, the strongest existence there ever was. Even the currently influential clan dwelled under his uncle's brilliance. Jian Chen smiled at Changyang Su and said gently, "Su'er, it hasn't been easy for our Changyang clan to go from a nameless organization to its current glory. As the young master of the clan, you have to be a model example. You can't become prideful, arrogant, let alone haughty. At the same time, you can't make trouble outside for no reason, or injure and bully other people on a whim. Do you understand?" "Yes, uncle. I will commit your guidance to heart." Changyang Su replied politely. Before he had come, he had already thought of how he should ask his uncle for violet cloud peaches. He had even made up his mind to cling on to his uncle until he gave him the violet cloud peaches if he initially declined. However, when he truly faced his legendary uncle, he suddenly discovered that he had lost all courage to talk. Although his uncle treated him as family, he was utterly in fear before his uncle. He even trembled inside as if he was not facing his uncle but an indomitable god. His father and his grandfather had told him the same words many times, but he never truly took it to heart. He would just turn a deaf ear to it. However, he felt like he had lost all will to resist towards his uncle's words, firmly imprinting the words that were said to him many times deeply in his heart. Changyang Su sensed his change before his uncle. This made him feel fear and even tremble. His forehead had even become covered with cold sweat. At that moment, he finally understood just how terrifying his uncle was. "Su'er, have you come to me for something today?" Jian Chen asked. He completely treated Changyang Su as a junior of his, acting extremely amicable. This was because he thought of Shengguan Aojian when he saw Changyang Su. The two of them were roughly the same age. "And no. I've actually come this time to meet uncle. I wish uncle the best and to not overwork." I'll go now," Changyang Su stuttered a little, becoming rather unwilling to raise the matter of the violet cloud peaches. Jian Chen nodded and waved his hand. "Su'er, you can go." "Yes, uncle. I'll go now." Changyang Su left politely. Jian Chen looked at Changyang Su's back and suddenly said, "Su'er." Changyang Su seemed to leap in fright when he heard Jian Chen. He jerked before turning around, bowing towards Jian Chen. "Uncle?" "Su'er, I understand your intentions. You've already groomed yourself to possess the arrogance of a wastrel son. You have a haughty mindset. If you don't change it soon, you'll cause a lot of trouble sooner or later. No one dares to offend the Changyang clan with its current strength, but that's because we don't purposefully provoke or abuse others. If you casually offend other people from today onwards, there'll still be some people who'll run the risk of offending the Changyang clan to take your life. Do you understand?" Jian Chen said sternly. Changyang Su became rather pale and responded politely, "I understand. Su'er, you must remember that our Changyang clan is not afraid of anything. No matter how powerful the enemies are, we will not fear them, but we can't go causing problems without any reason. Do you understand? If you want to become an expert, you must go on journeys. There are no experts on the Tianyuan continent who have been raised in the comfort of their own homes. Instead, they've experienced countless storms of blood and made their way up by wading through blood. Your current strength basically completely originates from heavenly resources. It won't be of any benefit to you as time goes on. It'll even affect your foundation, Jian Chen said sternly. He seemed like a senior lecturing a junior right now. Yes, uncle. I will definitely bear that in mind. Chang Yang-su's forehead had already become covered in sweat, and he trembled even harder inside. He felt more and more terrified about his uncle. He had never thought that his uncle was so great. He clearly had not come home many times and had not even seen him many times, yet his uncle knew exactly what was happening with him. Chang Yang-su even gained the impression that there was nothing in the world that his uncle did not know about, as if the entire world was in his uncle's palm. The thought made Chang Yang-su feel even more respect for his uncle, and he feared him. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.